inner adversary confronting the greatest foe within and the wilderness of the mind. Welcome, dear listener, to this sanctuary of stillness. As the world outside gently hushes its clamor and distant lights dim like fading stars, take a deep, slow breath. Feel the cool air grace your skin a soft whisper, and let the rustling wind through the leaves lull you into a state of profound surrender. All things are now letting go, and so too are you. In this precious moment, nothing is asked of you. Simply be. Tonight we embark on a profound journey, a courageous exploration of a truth often overlooked, yet intimately close. The greatest enemy in life is often oneself. It is not an external foe, nor a challenging circumstance, nor another person. Rather, it is the internal mountains of doubt, the forests of fear, and the rivers of clinging that flow within our own minds. The purpose of this series is to help you identify these inner adversaries, to understand their nature through the lens of Buddhist wisdom and meditation, and to learn how to transform them into allies paving the way for authentic peace and liberation. If you find solace, inspiration, or a flicker of light in these quiet whispers, please consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video. Your support helps us continue to share these ancient teachings and build a community of conscious explorers. Feel free to share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Now take a deep breath and let us begin this journey of inner discovery. When we speak of enemies, our minds typically conjure images of external forces, rivals, critics, financial hardships, or unforeseen illnesses. We instinctively prepare to battle, defend, or strategize to overcome these tangible obstacles. However, ancient wisdoms, traditions, particularly Buddhism, unveil a deeper truth, a more subtle and elusive adversary that resides within the very temple of our inner being. This foe possesses no concrete form, utters no discernible shouts, yet wields an immense power to constrain, defeat, and hinder our growth. It is a complex aggregate of mental habits, mistaken beliefs, suppressed emotions, and invisible attachments. To understand and truly master this inner enemy, we require a profound journey of self-exploration, an expedition into the very wilderness of our own minds. Imagine your mind as a vast, untamed wilderness, freshly discovered. Initially, it appears boundless, full of potential, yet also shrouded in mystery and unpredictability. The pioneer who sets foot on this land brings with them a lifetime of expectations, deeply ingrained experiences from the old world, long-formed thought patterns, beliefs solidified over years. They hope this new territory will conform to those expectations, that it will be safe, predictable, and easily controllable. However, the wilderness of the mind operates under different laws. It is in constant flux, always shifting, much like desert dunes, endlessly reshaped by the wind. Worries, fears, and doubts arise like wild, towering mountains, relentlessly blocking the path. Feelings of insecurity behave like rivers that abruptly change their course, sweeping away any sense of stability the pioneer desperately seeks. The pioneer's greatest struggle is not against the wilderness itself, but against their desperate clinging to old maps, to the illusion that this new terrain must resemble the familiar. They try to impose order, to force familiar structures onto a new fluid and impermanent reality. The result is frustration, exhaustion, and pain, as they realize that all attempts at control are futile. This internal conflict, born from resistance to reality, is the first manifestation of the inner enemy. It whispers insidious lies, You are not strong enough. This shouldn't be happening. You are broken. These whispers originating from within are far more damaging than any external challenge, for they undermine the very foundation of self-trust and inner peace. This journey into the wilderness of the mind begins with confronting the profound truth of shunyata, or emptiness. When the Buddha spoke of emptiness, he was not suggesting nihilism or that life holds no meaning, nor was he implying that your existence is insignificant. On the contrary, he was revealing a radical, liberating freedom. Emptiness in this context is the understanding that nothing, absolutely nothing, possesses an inherently fixed, independent, or permanent existence. Your pain, your identity, the stories you tell yourself about your life, even this very moment you are experiencing, they are all fluid, dynamic, and interdependent, devoid of a solid, unchanging core. They are like a vast, empty canvas, constantly being painted upon and then wiped clean. When life delivers a shattering blow, be it the loss of a job, a cherished loved one, your health, or even your sense of purpose, your mind instinctively scrambles to grasp onto something, a reason, a blame, a desperate sense of control. But what if the very first layer of suffering, the root of your agony, stems from this act of grasping? What if the intense pain of losing something cherished is amplified by the unconscious, deeply ingrained belief that you ever truly owned it in the first place? Emptiness is not a cold, indifferent void. It is a gentle, liberating unraveling of illusions, particularly the pervasive illusion that anything in this transient existence can remain exactly the same forever. This is not a dire prognosis or bad news. It is in fact the direct doorway to profound freedom. The moment you truly perceive that everything is in a constant state of flux, that no experience, no label, no feeling is fixed or immutable, you cease fighting the relentless waves of change. You stop desperately clinging to the person you were before the storm violently struck and something truly extraordinary begins to happen. You float effortlessly, buoyed by the very currents you once resisted. The pioneer learns that the desert is not a place to be conquered by old maps or rigid expectations, but a boundless space to be navigated by the wisdom of constant adaptation and radical acceptance. The Buddha's teaching on emptiness was not meant to instill fear or despair. It was meant to liberate us. He yearned for us to see that what causes the most profound suffering is not life itself, but the rigid stories we construct about how life must conform to our preconceived notions. Emptiness is the courage to see life directly raw and unfiltered, stripped of the heavy veil of old expectations and comforting illusions. Consider the profound experience of grief. When someone you love dearly departs, the mind desperately clings to every memory, every what if, every haunting regret. But beneath that overwhelming cascade of pain lies a quieter, more tender truth. The person you lost was never a fixed, static entity to begin with. They were a flowing river of moments, a mosaic of constant change. Laughter one day, tears the next, silence the day after. And you too are a mosaic of change. This understanding doesn't diminish the reality or depth of your love. It makes it more real, more poignant. Because when you stop desperately clinging to the illusion that people and things are meant to stay perpetually frozen in time, you can finally truly appreciate the exquisite beauty of their inherent impermanence. They mattered profoundly precisely because they were fleeting. Their love touched you with such indelible force precisely because it couldn't last forever in a fixed form. This is the foundational lesson of shunyata. Everything is empty of a fixed, inherent identity. Everything is free to change. And while this realization might initially feel terrifying, unsettling your ingrained sense of stability, it is paradoxically the softest, most secure landing place you will ever discover. It means your failures do not irrevocably define you, because they too are empty, constantly shifting, constantly evolving. They are like footprints in the sand, always being erased by the next wave. It means your heartbreak is not the definitive conclusion of your story, because it too is empty. It will inherently evolve, transform, and eventually soften like the desert wind smoothing the dunes. It means even your own identity, the very person you think you are, is not permanently etched in stone. You are a fluid, dynamic process, a continuous becoming, not a static finished product. And this fundamental understanding radically alters how you experience suffering, because when pain inevitably arises, you don't rigidly lock it in place by declaring, "This is who I am now, broken, unworthy, lost." Instead, you perceive the pain as a temporary visitor, a passing phenomenon, not a permanent roommate that defines your being. You see your sadness as a fleeting cloud, not the entire sky itself. You become curiously inquisitive about it, rather than utterly consumed by it, allowing it to move through you like a passing storm. Emptiness also unveils a radical truth about control. The vast majority of our suffering stems from this exhausting, relentless tug-of-war with life. Our desperate attempts to force things to conform to our desires, our futile efforts to prevent change from sweeping in. This is the inner enemy of control, constantly battling against the inherent flow of reality. But when you truly internalize that life itself is empty of any fixed script, any predetermined narrative, you naturally cease attempting to write one. Instead, you begin to dance with the unpredictable rhythms of existence. You lose the desperate need to perpetually label experiences as good or bad. You stop demanding that every single moment meticulously fit your preconceived idea of happiness. And in doing so, you uncover something truly shocking. The majority of your suffering was never caused by life itself, but by the intricate, often self-defeating story you were telling about it. The desperate attempts of your mind to impose a fixed narrative on a fluid reality. Imagine clutching a rope tied to something incredibly heavy. Every time life shifts, the rope pulls taut, and your hands bleed from your desperate, unyielding grip. Emptiness is the profound wisdom that allows you to drop the rope. It doesn't signify indifference or a lack of caring. It means you finally comprehend that your tenacious, unyielding grip is the very reason for your suffering, for the bleeding. When you drop the rope, something truly stunning occurs. You realize you can still love deeply without clinging desperately. You can still care profoundly without needing to control outcomes. You can still move forward with purpose without demanding that the path be perfectly straight or entirely predictable. This is what Buddhists refer to as the middle way, the path that skillfully navigates between the extremes of attachment and aversion. And here is where emptiness transforms into pure, unadulterated strength, because once you no longer require life to obey your expectations, once you release your rigid demands, you become paradoxically unbreakable. This doesn't imply immunity from pain. It means pain no longer possesses or defines you. You feel it fully, completely, but it does not become your identity. This is the very heart of resilience in Buddhist teaching. It isn't about developing a thicker skin or hardening your heart. It's about becoming so profoundly open, so remarkably fluid, that no experience can trap you like water flowing effortlessly around immovable rocks. You continue to move, not because you are numb or indifferent, but because you are free, and this profound freedom fundamentally alters your relationships. When you grasp the essence of emptiness, you cease treating others as fixed characters, mere supporting roles in your personal narrative. You stop imposing rigid expectations, such as they must always love me this specific way, or they can never change. Instead, you encounter them freshly, authentically in each new moment, unburdened by the heavy weight of old assumptions or preconceived notions. This makes love lighter, more expansive, and infinitely freer. It facilitates forgiveness with greater ease. It renders conflict less personal, less adversarial, because you perceive that everyone, even the individuals who inflict hurt upon you, is just as empty of fixed identity, just as perpetually changing as you are. When life inevitably becomes arduous, when you experience the devastating loss of a job, a person, a deeply cherished dream, emptiness grants you a secret, profound power. You cease believing that this present difficult moment is the entirety of your story. You understand that this moment too is empty, already in the process of changing, already in motion. You don't need to succumb to panic or collapse into despair. You simply need to stay present and open. This is the enduring resilience that truly lasts, not the brittle strength of forced positivity, but the flowing, adaptable strength of someone who deeply knows, I can lose everything and still be okay because I never truly owned anything to begin with. Emptiness is not a cold intellectual philosophy. It is the ultimate tenderness. It is the gentle whisper that says, let go, my love. You were never meant to carry all of this alone. And from that profound act of letting go, something surprising, something beautiful begins to bloom: courage. The courage to live fully, to love, without guarantees to try, even though the risk of failure is ever present. Because once you fully realize that life owes you nothing, you cease waiting for it to be fair, to be easy, to be predictable. You simply start living anyway. In the end, emptiness does not render life meaningless. On the contrary, it makes life infinitely precious. It is the profound, constant reminder that every single moment, every fleeting connection, every precious breath is an unrepeatable gift, not because it lasts indefinitely, but precisely because it doesn't. And armed with this profound understanding, you can walk into your hardest, most challenging days with open, receptive hands and a fearless heart. You no longer need to clutch life so desperately, so tightly. You can hold it gently, tenderly, knowing with profound certainty that it is already changing, and so too are you. This is the quiet, undeniable strength of emptiness, the strength of someone who has literally nothing left to cling to and is finally, beautifully, undeniably free. The architect's shadow confronting self-judgment and the chains of karma. As the first light of dawn stretches across the vast open plains, illuminating the contours of the burgeoning settlement, the air carries the purposeful sounds of the pioneers' continued labor. The rhythmic clang of hammer on wood, the steady scrape of stone against stone, the murmurs of collective effort, these are the undeniable echoes of creation, of a life taking root against the untamed wilderness. Yet even amidst this industrious harmony, a subtle, often unseen tension persists. The pioneer, though outwardly building, may carry an internal critic, a harsh judge within, constantly evaluating, finding fault, and casting long shadows of doubt over every effort. This inner adversary, the voice of self-judgment and the intricate web of unexamined actions, is a formidable foe, often more debilitating than any external challenge. This is where the profound understanding of karma takes root, not as a punitive force, but as a mirror reflecting our own choices, and where the radical compassion of the bodhisattva path begins to illuminate the path towards healing the wounds inflicted by this internal judge. The pioneer, having initially confronted the raw, inherent impermanence of the land and the freedom found in embracing emptiness, now faces the second layer of challenge, the active principle that shapes this fluid reality. They understand that merely existing on the land is not enough. The true work involves deliberate cultivation, careful stewardship, and the meticulous sowing of seeds. Each act of clearing, each furrow plowed, each seed dropped into the earth carries profound significance. They know that a hasty, careless act today, neglecting the soil, ignoring the weather patterns, building without foresight, can lead to a barren harvest tomorrow, or inadvertently awaken dormant dangers. This practical understanding is a direct mirror to the Buddhist concept of karma. Karma, in its deepest sense, is not a cosmic judge or an arbitrary fate. It is the undeniable, intricate law of cause and effect, the profound interconnectedness of intention and consequence. It is the understanding that every thought, every word, and every action we set into motion leaves an indelible imprint, a seed sown in the fertile ground of our existence, waiting for the opportune conditions to sprout and bear fruit. The pioneer's success or failure is not a matter of random chance, but a direct reflection of the seeds they've sown through their actions, diligent or negligent. Many misunderstand karma, reducing it to a simplistic ledger of good deeds earning rewards and bad deeds incurring punishment. This is a limited view, like judging the pioneer's success solely by the size of his initial harvest, ignoring the long-term sustainability of the land or the ethical choices made in its cultivation. True karma is far more nuanced, reflecting the intricate ripples of intention and consequence that flow through our inner and outer worlds. A thought of anger, even unspoken, sends a ripple through your inner landscape, disturbing your own peace, just as a carelessly discarded ember can ignite a devastating forest fire. Conversely, an act of kindness quietly performed nourishes the collective soil, much like a hidden spring nurtures the roots of a distant grove. The beauty and the terror of karma lie in its often unconscious operation. We frequently plant seeds unknowingly through automatic reactions, ingrained fears, habitual aversions, and the pervasive voice of self-judgment. When hardship arises, whether from external circumstances or internal turmoil, we mistakenly perceive it as external misfortune, failing to recognize its roots in the seeds we ourselves have sown, perhaps even in patterns ingrained over lifetimes. The pioneer might curse a dry spell, forgetting the years of unchecked logging that led to soil erosion and desertification. Karma invites us to awaken to this profound interconnectedness, to see that the terrain we traverse today is not arbitrary, but a direct consequence of actions set in motion long before. When the harsh realities of the new land confront the pioneer, a crop failure, a broken tool, a devastating storm, or the gnawing feeling of personal inadequacy, it can feel utterly unfair. Just as we often feel like victims of fate when personal suffering strikes, forgetting our active role in shaping our own reality through our choices and reactions. But karma is not fate. Fate is something that happens to you, a predetermined outcome. Karma, however, is something that fundamentally flows from you, a dynamic process of consequence, stemming from your conscious and unconscious actions, whether you consciously perceive it or not. When suffering arrives, Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to wallow in self-blame or to crumble under the debilitating weight of guilt, for guilt is merely another insidious form of self-attachment binding you to a past you cannot change. Instead, you are invited to awaken to pause and to ask, what seeds am I watering right now? Even if I cannot precisely trace the origin of this particular storm, what am I actively feeding with my current thoughts, words, and actions? Am I compounding fear with more fear? Am I meeting anger with more anger? Or am I choosing consciously to plant a fundamentally different seed, even in this bitter, seemingly barren soil? This profound inquiry is the first step towards transforming karma from an abstract principle into a practical guide for conscious living. Karma doesn't assert that every painful event in your life is your fault in a simplistic, accusatory sense. It asserts that every painful event is a profound opportunity to respond differently than you have before. This is the precise mechanism by which karmic cycles are broken, not through external punishment, but through conscious, deliberate response. Every time you choose awareness over automatic reaction, compassion over blame, presence over escape, you actively interrupt a cycle that might have been spinning for lifetimes. The pioneer, instead of despairing over a ruined crop or blaming the land, learns to analyze the soil, adjust the planting methods, and seek new knowledge. They discover that the land, like life, responds not to complaint, but to wise action. Difficult times are the crucible where karma ripens most rapidly, precisely because suffering forces us to confront what we usually avoid. When life is easy, we conveniently cover our blind spots with comfort and distraction and busyness. But suffering brutally tears off the mask, exposing where we still cling, where we still believe life owes us something, where we are still fighting against the inherent reality of change. This exposure hurts undeniably, but it is the only fertile ground where genuine growth can truly happen. When you begin to see hardship as karmic weather, not a divine punishment, but a natural unfolding of past conditions, everything fundamentally changes. A storm doesn't mean the sky hates you. It simply means certain atmospheric winds were already moving, gathering force long before you awoke this morning. You don't have to take it personally, but you do have to make a profound choice. How will I walk through this rain? Will I curse the relentless sky, or will I choose to learn how to dance in the downpour? Understanding karma also profoundly dissolves the insidious illusion of being a lone, isolated victim in a cruel, indifferent world. Your individual karma is not and never has been separate from others. Every action you undertake ripples outward, touching countless lives you may never consciously meet again. The harsh words you hurled at a fellow pioneer years ago might have inadvertently fueled the anger they carried home to their family, creating a ripple of discord. Conversely, the profound kindness you offered to someone who felt utterly invisible might have saved them from the precipice of despair, fostering a ripple of hope. Every action plants seeds not only within the fertile soil of your own life, but within the vast interconnected collective field we all share and walk through together. This means that even your most intensely personal suffering is rarely personal in isolation. It is intricately connected to countless invisible causes, cultural, historical, ancestral, and the shared human condition, all merging, converging, and manifesting in the present moment. This doesn't absolve you of your responsibility, but it crucially adds perspective. You are not a solitary player in a private tragedy. You are an inseparable part of a vast, shared, intricate web of cause and effect. This is why wisdom, in difficult times, is not found in futilely asking, "Why me?" but rather in the empowering question, "What now?" The past has already ripened into this moment. You cannot unplant old seeds, but you possess the profound power to choose how you respond to whatever arises right here, right now. Every response you make becomes the seed of your future experience. Meet this moment with unyielding bitterness, and you continue to water the seeds of bitterness. Meet it with profound presence and conscious awareness, and you water the seeds of freedom. Karma also teaches us patience. Some suffering is ancient, deeply embedded, arising from causes you will likely never fully comprehend. This is precisely why not every storm will magically dissipate, simply because you meditate diligently, pray fervently, or practice kindness for a mere week. Some seeds require years, even lifetimes, to fully bloom and exhaust their karmic potential. Spiritual practice is not a quick fix, a magical panacea. It is instead a profound way of fundamentally altering what you plant from now on. This is why Buddhist resilience is so fundamentally different from naive, blind optimism. It doesn't promise that if you simply think positive, everything will magically turn out fine. It teaches instead that every single action matters profoundly, even when you cannot immediately perceive the tangible results. Every time you pause instead of automatically reacting, every time you choose compassion instead of retaliatory anger, every time you breathe deeply into fear instead of frantically running from it, you are actively planting new seeds. Even if the ground around you seems utterly barren, new seeds are being sown. This is also why blaming yourself for your suffering is utterly pointless. Self-blame is merely another insidious form of ego attachment, the deluded belief that everything is exclusively about you. But karma is vast, impersonal, and unimaginably complex. The very same storm might be ripening seeds planted by your distant ancestors, your encompassing culture, and countless other beings whose actions collectively shaped the world you currently inhabit. Your profound responsibility is not to painstakingly figure out every single cause, but to respond wisely to whatever arises now. When you truly grasp the implications of karma, you cease demanding that life be fair in the simplistic, ego-driven way you desire. You begin to perceive that fairness is not the ultimate point. Growth is. Every storm, every challenge is simultaneously a mirror and a teacher. It unflinchingly shows you what remains unresolved within you, and it simultaneously offers you the precise tools to respond differently. It holds up a mirror to your past reactions and asks, will you react the same way again, or will you bravely choose to create a new ending to this story? Difficult times become your most potent training grounds. Every insult, every setback, every heartbreak transforms into a crucible, a place to practice the profound art of being awake. You stop demanding that life be easy and instead you become profoundly skilled at meeting life exactly as it is in all its raw, unpredictable glory. This is the authentic resilience that karma builds, not the brittle forced resilience of gritting your teeth and enduring, but the true flowing resilience of someone who perceives every single moment as a seed of the future. Even in your darkest, most desperate moments, you are still actively planting something. Even when you feel utterly powerless, you are subtly yet profoundly shaping what comes next. This is the secret, enduring strength of karma. It reminds you that you are never truly powerless. You can't change the storm that is already descending, but you can always choose how you walk through it. And that choice, above all else, profoundly matters. This understanding doesn't magically make pain disappear, but it makes pain meaningful. You cease perceiving suffering as punishment and begin to see it as a wise, albeit harsh teacher. You realize that every tear shed every moment of gnawing doubt, every trembling breath drawn in the lonely night, is an integral part of your profound training to respond with wisdom, training to break cycles that might have trapped you for lifetimes, training to leave the path clearer, more illuminated for those who will walk after you. This is how karma transforms from a mere cosmic law into a path to freedom, not a confining prison, but a liberating doorway. And every single time you walk through that doorway with conscious awareness, you actively rewrite your future. The inner compass, navigating the landscape of suffering with the Four Noble Truths and Samadhi. As the sun climbs higher over the newly established homestead, casting long-defined shadows across the meticulously tilled fields, a sense of purposeful labor fills the air. The sounds of construction, once sporadic, now echo with a steady rhythm. The precise strike of a hammer, the even pull of a saw, the quiet murmurs of pioneers collaborating. This is the stage of diligent building, of transforming the raw potential of the land into a structured dwelling, a sanctuary not just for the body, but for the spirit. The pioneer, having deeply understood the fluid nature of existence and the intricate dance of cause and effect, now seeks a guiding principle, a blueprint that can lead to enduring stability amidst the inevitable shifts of the wilderness. They need not just a vision, but the unwavering focus to manifest it. This internal architecture is precisely what the Buddha's Four Noble Truths provide as an infallible blueprint, and Samadhi, meditative concentration, offers as the profound, unshakable skill required to build it, becoming the silent architect of your own inner peace. The pioneer, having felt the profound sting of initial hardships and the futility of fighting the land's inherent nature, now seeks a sustainable path, a way to build in harmony with reality. They understand that every struggle, every setback, every unexpected storm, every challenge of cultivating fertile ground is not an arbitrary punishment, but a direct manifestation of certain underlying conditions. This clear-eyed recognition of reality, devoid of denial or blame, is the cornerstone of the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, dukkha. It's not about wallowing in despair or passively accepting misery. Instead, it's about a sharp, direct acknowledgement of life as it is. The pioneer experiences the raw truth of dukkha in the physical ache of relentless labor, the gnawing anxiety of a lean harvest, the biting cold of an unexpected frost, the inevitable erosion of even the most stable ground. They learn that discomfort, disappointment, and the ephemeral nature of all things, The cycle of growth and decay, the ceaseless changing of seasons, the unpredictable shifts in weather are not anomalies, not personal affronts, but intrinsic, unavoidable parts of the human experience. This truth invites us to shed the pervasive illusion that life should be perpetually comfortable, perfectly predictable, or absolutely fair. It liberates us from the exhausting, self-defeating struggle of resisting what is offering instead the profound comfort of truth itself, the liberation that comes from no longer fighting or denying reality. The wise pioneer knows the dry seasons and the harsh winters are part of the land's cycle, not personal affronts. They accept these conditions as fundamental, and from that acceptance, they begin to strategize to adapt to build resilience, rather than remaining trapped in futile complaint or victimhood. This initial acceptance is the bedrock upon which all further inner construction rests, yet merely acknowledging suffering is insufficient. The pioneer must also understand its origin to prevent its recurrence and to cultivate conditions for greater well-being. They meticulously observe patterns in the land. Certain choices in farming lead to healthier crops, while others invite pests, deplete the soil, or lead to barren yields. More subtly, they notice how their own internal reactions, panic during a drought, obsessive worry about future droughts, or anger at the stubbornness of the land, amplify their discomfort, turning mere hardship into profound misery. This deep understanding of the source of dissatisfaction leads to the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, samudaya, which points to craving tanha as the ultimate root cause. Suffering arises because life changes, because all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. But misery deepens, perpetuates, and intensifies because the mind clings. It clings desperately to comfort, to specific desired outcomes, to a fixed and idealized identity, to people remaining exactly as they were, to the deluded belief that things should conform to our plans. This clinging like a pioneer, desperately holding onto a worn-out tool that no longer serves or stubbornly refusing to adapt to new soil conditions, prevents adaptation, perpetuates struggle, and creates immense friction with reality. The second truth shines a piercing light on this habit, not with judgment or accusation, but with radical clarity. It asks, look closely at how craving controls you. Is this the only way to live? Is this the only possible response? The pioneer, through this insight, learns that the problem isn't just the external challenge, but their internal resistance to it. Their insatiable demand for things to be other than they are. They understand that their own grasping at control, their own attachment to specific rigid outcomes, is the very fuel that keeps the fire of dissatisfaction burning within their inner landscape. With a profound understanding of suffering and its origins, a powerful liberating possibility emerges, leading to the third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, nirodha. This is not a naive, unrealistic promise that all pain will magically vanish forever, or that life will become a perpetual state of bliss. Instead, it is a radical, empowering declaration that freedom from unnecessary suffering is possible. This liberation doesn't come from external control or from forcing life into submission. It arises from the internal act of releasing the craving that controls you. The pioneer who releases their rigid demand for a perfect guaranteed harvest and instead embraces the reality of working with the land as it is adapting to its rhythms finds a deeper, more sustainable peace. This is not about becoming indifferent or emotionally detached. It is about loving life fully deeply without strangling it with possessive demands. It means learning to hold everything, the fruits of their labor, the friendships forged, the very identity of pioneer, with open, receptive hands. When hardship comes, they do not collapse into self-pity, nor do they seek external blame. When joy arises, they do not frantically demand its perpetual stay. They meet each moment exactly as it is, with nothing left to desperately grip. This freedom manifests as spaciousness, even in crisis. There is a vital, breathable space between raw pain and knee-jerk reaction, between the crushing weight of sadness and debilitating despair. This space is not a void. It is the expansive realm of possibility, the possibility to respond wisely, compassionately, instead of reacting blindly, habitually. And this vital space grows exponentially every time you consciously practice seeing your craving, naming it, without judgment, and allowing it to soften, to loosen its grip, instead of tightening in fear and resistance. This liberation is the ultimate goal, the true cessation of the suffering we create for ourselves. To actualize these profound truths and construct an inner sanctuary that withstands any storm, a home for the spirit that endures beyond the shifting sands of external life. The pioneer needs not just a blueprint, but also the practical tools and the unwavering skill to use them. This brings us to the culmination of these insights, the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering, Magga, which is meticulously laid out as the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is not a rigid list of prescriptive rules to be blindly followed, nor a theoretical framework for academic study. It is a dynamic, transformative training ground for your entire being, guiding you to build your inner home with precision, wisdom, and sustained effort. It systematically trains your right view, samadhi, the profound wisdom to see things as they truly are, interconnected and impermanent, replacing self-blame with humility and clarity. It cultivates right intention, samma sankappa, the willingness to meet each moment, even the hardest ones, with compassion and non-violence, choosing no harm even amidst intense fear. It sharpens right speech, samma vaka, the careful conscious choice of words, to stabilize rather than inflame, to unite rather than divide. It guides right action, samma kammanta, acting with integrity, ethics, and care in all your endeavors, even in pain. It directs right livelihood, samma ajva, ensuring your work and means of living contribute positively to the world, not exploiting others or sowing fear. It energizes right effort, samma vayama, engaging fully and persistently in wholesome activities without rushing or numbing out, recognizing the continuous nature of spiritual growth. It grounds right mindfulness, samma sati, anchoring yourself firmly in the present breath and body, observing thoughts and feelings without judgment. And it deepens right concentration, samma samadhi, cultivating profound inner stillness and one-pointed focus amidst external chaos. The pioneer in building their literal home applies right view by understanding the geology, climate, and unique challenges of the land. Right intention guides them to choose sustainable building materials and methods that serve the long-term well-being of the community. Right action ensures the foundations are laid true and strong, reflecting integrity in every step. Right effort propels them through long days of demanding labor, maintaining diligence even when exhausted. Right mindfulness keeps them precisely focused on each beam, each nail, each stone, preventing costly mistakes due to distraction. And right concentration allows them to maintain a steady hand and a clear mind despite fatigue, external pressures, or the inevitable doubts that arise during a monumental task. These are not practices to be postponed until the crisis passes or the home is fully built. They are the very skills applied in the midst of the storm, integral to the construction process itself. This path does not promise freedom from suffering, but freedom to suffer wisely, transforming hardship into a profound teacher, a fertile training ground, and ultimately a compassionate offering back to the world. It is the path to building an inner sanctuary so robust that no external storm can truly demolish it. Central to the effectiveness of the Eightfold Path, particularly in building the inner sanctuary, is the cultivation of samadhi, or meditative concentration. When most people hear the word meditation, they often think of simple relaxation techniques or a temporary escape from the pressures of daily life. But samadhi is far deeper, far more potent than mere stress relief. It is the profound ability to bring the mind to such complete stillness, such unshakable one-pointed focus, that the usual storms of chaotic thought and overwhelming emotion lose their power to pull you away from your center. It is not about escaping reality or detaching from life. It is about becoming utterly unmovable right in the very heart of life's relentless chaos. Imagine the pioneer needing to drive a crucial nail into a stubborn piece of timber or set a heavy beam with absolute precision. Their body might ache from days of labor. Their mind might be racing with concerns about supplies or weather. But through samadhi, they achieve a laser-like focus that allows them to perform the task flawlessly, as if time itself slows down. This kind of profound concentration is not accidental. It is a strength meticulously built through deliberate, consistent practice. Every time your mind wanders aimlessly during meditation or daily tasks, and you gently, patiently bring it back to your chosen anchor, like the breath or the task at hand, you are diligently training the muscle of inner endurance. Every single time you bravely stay present with a painful or uncomfortable feeling, instead of frantically distracting yourself, you are profoundly learning how to bear the seemingly unbearable, how to sit with discomfort without being overwhelmed. This is the very essence of meditative endurance, the unwavering willingness to stay with reality precisely as it is, without any desperate need to flee into fantasy denial or reactive behavior. This skill is exceedingly rare in our modern distraction-filled world because it courageously demands confronting the part of you that always yearns to run to flee from discomfort. It asks you to sit directly in the fire of unpleasant experience, not because you derive pleasure from suffering, but because you yearn to discern the profound truth that lies beneath it. And that truth, once you are still enough, focused enough to perceive it, is this: pain itself does not break you. It is the inner resistance to pain that ultimately shatters the heart. Samadhi teaches you how to stop resisting, not by collapsing into helpless passivity, but by profoundly learning to hold your attention steady, unwavering even when the mind screams for immediate relief or escape. When you sit in this profound depth of stillness, something astonishing begins to unfold. You discover that the mind is far bigger than the pain it temporarily holds. The storm of thoughts and emotions no longer consumes the entire sky of your awareness. it becomes a passing cloud, an ephemeral phenomenon. And beneath it, the boundless ground of your awareness remains unshaken, utterly undisturbed, like the solid earth beneath the pioneer's feet, regardless of the storm above. This unshaken awareness is not cold intellectual detachment. It is a warm, expansive presence, the kind of presence that can hold profound grief without succumbing to drowning, that can hold paralyzing fear without collapsing into panic, that can hold searing anger without exploding destructively. It is not suppression of emotions. It is containment, the profound ability to hold immense energy without needing to immediately discharge it. This containment grants you invaluable time to choose how you will respond, to choose what kind of person you will become under intense pressure rather than reacting automatically. Without this kind of profound inner stillness, suffering triggers endless destructive chain reactions, pain transmutes into panic, panic spirals into blame, blame ignites destructive action, and suddenly you are not only suffering, but you are actively creating new suffering for yourself and for others. Samadhi breaks this chain. It meticulously creates a pause, a vital space between what happens externally and how you choose to respond internally. In that sacred space resides your profound freedom, the true power to choose your response to life rather than being a slave to reaction. The mirage of certainty, navigating the landscape of impermanence and non-self. As the sun climbs towards its zenith, casting sharp, defined shadows across the hard-won homestead, the pioneer might pause surveying the constructed walls and tilled fields. A sense of accomplishment may fill the air, yet a subtle disquiet often lingers. It's the quiet recognition that even the sturdiest walls and the most meticulously planned structures are inherently temporary. The land itself is in constant flux. Rivers change course, seasons shift, and even the most enduring mountains erode over millennia. This is the moment when the pioneer confronts a deeper, more fundamental challenge, learning to navigate not just the external wilderness, but the inner wilderness of uncertainty and the ever-changing nature of the self. This is where the profound teachings of Buddhist temporal philosophy and Anatman non-self become invaluable guides, transforming what initially feels like a terrifying void into the very ground of liberation. The pioneer, having established a foothold, might now yearn for absolute certainty. They might demand that the river remain in its chosen channel, that the weather always be predictable, that their hard-won security endure forever. This deep-seated craving for certainty is not unique to the pioneer. It is a primal human longing for solid ground in a world that fundamentally offers none. Yet life, in its unpredictable wisdom, does not provide such guarantees, no matter how much effort is expended in pursuit. This relentless craving for stability and predictability is at the root of immense suffering, not because certainty exists somewhere and we simply haven't found it, but because certainty itself is a fundamental misunderstanding of life's inherent nature. It is the inner enemy of rigidity, constantly fighting against the fluid, dynamic essence of reality. And this is where Buddhist temporal philosophy, with its radical insights into the nature of time, cuts through the night sky like a bright, liberating flare. Our minds are perpetually trapped in a linear perception of time, treating the past and future as solid, tangible places, fixed and waiting. We mistakenly believe the true peace resides somewhere out there in a future where all problems are magically solved where healing is complete, where life finally makes perfect sense. This deceptive belief fuels a relentless urgency, driving us to rush frantically through the present moment, desperately seeking a better future. The pioneer, haunted by memories of past hardships and the struggle of previous seasons, might frantically over-prepare for future disasters, obsessively hoarding resources, or tirelessly working to control every possible variable. In doing so, they sacrifice the peace and richness of the present moment. They mistakenly believe that their true home or safety is always just over the next horizon, a place free from struggle, a state of perfect and permanent security. But Buddhist wisdom offers a profound truth that shatters this entire narrative. Time itself is not what you think it is. What you call the future is nothing but a thought arising now. It is a mental projection, a story we tell ourselves in the present moment. What you call the past is nothing but a memory appearing now, a fleeting image or sensation in your current awareness. The only actual undeniable reality, the only moment that ever truly exists, is this moment, this breath, right here. Everything else is a conceptual construct, a projection of the mind, a deeply ingrained habit, confusing fleeting thoughts and memories for concrete reality. This understanding profoundly matters in crisis because urgency and panic feed on the illusion of time. The more you mistakenly believe peace exists exclusively in the future, the more desperate you become to get there faster, leading to frantic, often ineffective actions. Every spiritual bypass, every unhealthy shortcut, every desperate grab for instant relief stems from this core illusion, the deluded belief that genuine healing and true peace are somewhere else, always just a bit further down the timeline. But healing does not happen in the future. Healing only happens now. And this now does not belong to the linear constraints of time. Buddhist temporal philosophy reveals us that time is not a river you passively float down, carried by an external current. Instead, it is a mental construction, a framework our minds impose on the ceaseless flow of phenomena. The past is already irrevocably gone. It exists only as a memory in the present. The future has never truly existed. It is merely a concept, a plan, or a fear arising in the present. The only thing that ever truly happens now, and this now is not a product of the past or merely a seed of the future. It is a fresh, entirely new arising moment after moment continuously renewing itself. Understanding this fundamentally dismantles urgency at its very root. If there is no fixed future, to frantically rush toward what is the hurry. If every healing, every profound insight, every transformative breakthrough can only occur in the expansive space of now, then what is the purpose of frantically running? The perceived race itself was a profound misunderstanding. You were already home, not because life magically became easy or perfect, but because the only place genuine healing and true peace ever truly resided was inside the boundless spaciousness of the present moment, a moment you were often too restless, too preoccupied with the illusions of time to even notice. This radical shift in understanding time does not make you passive or complacent. On the contrary, it makes you profoundly present. Instead of frantically rushing to solve the unsolvable or to control the uncontrollable, you learn to gently care for what is precisely here right now. Instead of desperately demanding that pain disappear quickly, you become curiously inquisitive about what pain actually is in this precise moment. not as a narrative about future suffering, but as a direct, unmediated experience in this breath. This dissolves the craving for fast, superficial solutions because you no longer believe solutions reside somewhere else, external to the present. If peace cannot be found now, it will not be found later. This does not mean ignoring real, necessary action or refusing to act wisely. It means acting without panic, because panic arises from mistakenly believing the story of a future disaster is already real. The pioneer, instead of fretting about next year's harvest, focuses on the immediate needs of the soil. The plants the shelter, trusting that wise action in the present is the only true preparation for the future. The belief in linear time also creates arbitrary self-imposed deadlines for healing and growth. You mistakenly believe grief should be gone after a few months. You think you should be strong again by next year. You compare your personal timeline to others, or to some internal calendar that dictates growth should happen faster, more predictably. But growth does not follow human-made clocks. Healing unfolds at the natural organic speed of reality itself, and reality does not obey human impatience. This is why Buddhist practice meticulously teaches patience, not as passive resignation or a simple waiting for the storm to pass, but as profound wisdom. Patience is what happens when you cease futilely fighting the natural pace of life. It is the courage to stand steadfast in discomfort without frantically trying to force relief. It is the bravery to trust that reality unfolds at its own inherent pace, and that your true job is not to force solutions, but to stay awake through every moment until clarity and transformation naturally arrive. This kind of patience is fierce because it asks you to trust life's inherent timing, even when your heart is breaking into a million pieces. This profound trust is only possible when you perceive time for what it truly is, a mental habit, a conceptual framework, not an immutable law of reality. The clock measures change, but it doesn't measure healing. Healing is not merely a product of hours passing. It is profoundly a product of presence deepening. Some moments can reveal more profound truth in a single breath than years of desperate avoidance ever could. And some deep wounds require decades to soften, precisely because the mind stubbornly resists meeting them fully in the present moment. When you understand time in this liberating way, you cease bargaining with reality. You stop saying, "I'll be okay if this is over by next month." You stop setting arbitrary deadlines for awakening. You stop treating spiritual practice like a frantic race to a distant finish line. Instead, you become deeply, intimately connected with now. You stop waiting for peace to magically arrive later. You stop postponing your own heart's openness until external conditions miraculously improve. This intimacy with now also powerfully dissolves the fear of the future, because you see with unwavering clarity the future is simply a thought appearing now. It has no inherent substance. It cannot harm you. All fear of the future is in reality fear of your own imagination, fear of a story the mind is meticulously telling itself in this very breath. This does not mean ignoring wise preparation or refusing to act intelligently. It means acting without panic, because panic arises from mistakenly believing the story of a future disaster is already real. This understanding profoundly transforms how you face crisis itself. Instead of perceiving crisis as a bad period of time you desperately need to escape, you see crisis as a series of fresh, distinct moments, each one new, each one workable. You stop labeling the entire season bad and begin to meet each breath inside the storm with profound curiosity instead of immediate rejection. This attention to moment-by-moment reality does not mean forgetting the larger picture. It means understanding that the larger picture is always made of this moment. The healing you seek is not a future event. It's the way you meet this moment right now. If you meet this moment with clarity, you are already healing, not because the pain is gone, but because your relationship to the pain is no longer built on desperate avoidance. This is the secret of timeless healing, the profound understanding that all healing is in essence the art of staying present, not passively waiting for the future to bring relief, but courageously allowing this moment to reveal its full unvarnished truth, including its pain, its fleeting beauty, and its inherent wisdom. This is why Buddhist practice consistently emphasizes direct experience over abstract concepts. Concepts reside in time. Experience only happens now. The frantic craving to fix everything quickly stems from forgetting this. It originates from the deluded belief that peace resides in some future you have not yet reached. This belief tragically turns every moment into a means to an end, something to frantically rush through on the way to something better. But Buddhist wisdom asks you to completely reverse this. It asks you to treat this moment as the destination itself. Even if this moment hurts, it is still the only doorway to freedom. Avoiding it only postpones the inevitable meeting you will eventually have to face. This is precisely why rushing never works. Healing cannot be forced, insight cannot be scheduled, and wisdom does not arrive faster simply because you demand it. Wisdom arrives when you cease frantically running away from now. This transforms even the very idea of progress. The mind mistakenly thinks progress means moving forward in time, but spiritual progress means deepening presence in this moment. The more fully you meet what is here, the more the habitual need to escape dissolves. This is real progress, not escaping pain, but meeting pain without resistance. When you perceive time this way, you also cease fearing backward steps, because you understand there is no backward. Every time old patterns arise, they do not erase your progress. They become an integral part of the path. The path is not a rigid line moving forward. It is a deepening spiral, always returning to now, but with newfound depth every time you meet yourself honestly. This changes your entire relationship with effort. When you mistakenly believe in time, effort feels heavy, an unending struggle to move forward. When you see through the illusion of time, effort becomes simply showing up for this moment fully. There's nowhere else to go. The destination was never in the future. It was always this breath, this body, this feeling. This understanding brings profound relief. The urgency softens the racing mind, slows the body relaxes into the profound trust that nothing needs to be forced. This trust does not originate from blind faith. It comes from seeing directly that time is merely a thought, and the freedom you seek has always been hiding inside this moment, a moment you were too busy, too preoccupied to fully enter. This is the freedom Buddhist teachers describe as the end of becoming the profound moment when you stop perpetually waiting to become someone else in the future and instead meet yourself completely now. In that meeting, healing happens not later, but now, not as an escape from now, but as the natural, inevitable unfolding of presence itself, the shifting mirage, dissolving the fixed self and liberating relationships. As the first rays of dawn begin to filter through the rough-hewn windows of the pioneer's cabin, illuminating the contours of their hard-won sanctuary, a subtle shift in perspective emerges. The land once perceived as a collection of fixed elements, a river here, a mountain there, now reveals its true nature, a dynamic, ever-changing tapestry of interconnected phenomena. The pioneer observes how the morning mist dissolves, revealing new vistas, how the river carves new channels over time, how even the most ancient trees gradually transform. This is the stage where the pioneer confronts a deeper illusion, one woven into the very fabric of their self-perception, the idea of a fixed, unchanging me. This is where the profound teaching of Anatman non-self becomes the ultimate liberator, dissolving the rigid inner enemy of identity and paving the way for authentic, unburdened relationships. The pioneer, having navigated the external wilderness and even begun to tame the internal adversaries of craving and fear, might now encounter a more subtle yet equally tenacious foe, the deeply ingrained belief in a permanent, isolated self. This belief, often unconscious, creates an internal rigidity, a demand for consistency that clashes with the fluid reality of existence. When life inevitably brings changes, a new role, a shifting relationship, a loss that alters one's perceived status, the fixed self feels threatened, attacked. It clings desperately to old definitions, old stories, old labels, resisting any transformation that might challenge its perceived solidity. This quiet internal violence, this fear of dissolving, is where suffering often hides most cunningly, like a splinter lodged deep beneath the skin of identity, untouched by external triumphs or external shelters. No amount of outward refuge, no amount of accumulated wealth or success can fully reach this place until one is truly willing to bravely question the very story of who they think they are. Buddhism names this pervasive illusion Atman or selfhood, the deluded belief that somewhere inside this complex body and mind there is a single, solid, independent, and unchanging essence of me that exists utterly separate from the flow of reality. This belief feels inherently natural because it has been meticulously rehearsed and reinforced by society, culture, and personal experience since early childhood. Every cultural narrative, every personal interaction, every advertisement subtly reinforces the idea of a stable, consistent me that must be protected, improved, and defined. But it is this very root misunderstanding that makes suffering feel so intensely personal, so utterly devastating. When life inevitably threatens the identity you have meticulously built, the job you identify with, the role you play in a family, the relationship that defines your sense of belonging, the health that underpins your capabilities, or the reputation you cherish, the mind experiences it like a physical assault. It panics because it simply does not know who you are without that comforting, familiar story. But what is truly disappearing is only the illusion that you are ever a fixed, unchanging entity. The you that is being threatened is merely a collection of transient aggregates. This is precisely where Anatman, the profound teaching of non-self, becomes radical medicine. Anatman does not mean you do not exist, nor does it imply a nihilistic void. It means that what you call me is not a single, solid, unchanging thing. It is a constantly changing process, a dynamic flow like a river of thoughts, emotions, memories, habits, and conditions, all dynamically flowing together for a moment, then shifting, changing again, without a permanent static core. The suffering of identity collapse happens because the mind frantically tries to freeze the river to hold on to one shape, one role, one rigid definition of self, and declare, "This is me forever." But the river does not obey. Life keeps moving, and the moment reality contradicts the story you told about yourself, suffering explodes not because life is cruel, but because clinging to a fixed identity in a constantly changing world always creates immense tension, always generates painful friction. The tighter the grip, the sharper the pain when reality inevitably shifts. This is why letting go of identity is not a loss, it is a profound relief. It is stepping out of the rigid prison cell you painstakingly built for yourself and discovering that you were never meant to fit inside a single story, a single definition. This letting go does not mean abandoning responsibility, ignoring your history, or becoming apathetic. On the contrary, it means seeing clearly that no story, no matter how true, how compelling, or how cherished, can contain the boundless fullness of what you are. Even the truest story is only a fleeting snapshot, a momentary description, and clinging to it rigidly blocks you from meeting reality as it is now in its ever-fresh immediacy. This is why identity loss, painful as it undeniably feels in the moment of stripping away, is also a profound opportunity. It is a forced, yet liberating invitation to stop desperately defending a fragile static image and bravely start discovering what you are beneath all images, all definitions, all roles. This discovery is not philosophical or abstract. It is direct experience felt in the very marrow of your being. Each time you sit in silence and watch thoughts arise and pass, you see it. Each thought claims to be you. This is my opinion, my fear, my desire. But none of them stay. They appear, perform for a moment, and then dissolve. If you were truly any one of those thoughts, your very existence would cease when that thought ended. But something remains, the simple luminous awareness that knows each thought comes and goes. This awareness has no story. It does not need one. It is the part of you that does not break when life breaks the silent witness to all change. This is why the teaching on non-self is not cold philosophy or an intellectual exercise. It is radical kindness, kindness to yourself, because it releases you from desperately defending what does not need defending, from maintaining an unsustainable illusion. It lets you become fluid instead of brittle, adaptable instead of rigid, so that change no longer feels like a personal failure, but an integral part of the natural flow of being alive. This kindness extends effortlessly to others too, because when you deeply understand your own identity is not fixed, you stop demanding others stay the same. You stop punishing people for changing or for not fitting your expectations, because you understand that constant change is the very nature of who we all are. This fluidity becomes essential during personal collapse, because collapse systematically dismantles identity by force. You lose the job, the role, the relationship, the health, the reputation, and each loss feels like losing a vital piece of yourself. But if you see through the illusion of a fixed self-loss transforms into something different, it becomes a stripping away of what was never truly you. This stripping hurts undeniably, but only because the mind mistakenly believed the story was who you are. When identity is no longer clung to loss, still brings the natural grief for what was shared, for what was meaningful, for what was real in its time, but the grief does not become self-destruction. It is not grief for your own core existence, because that existence was never tied to any single ephemeral version of self. This is the freedom hidden inside non-self. It is not emptiness in the way the ego fears it, as a void, but fullness without boundaries, the profound understanding that you can be anything life calls for next without needing to frantically defend what came before. This understanding also profoundly dissolves shame, because shame depends fundamentally on believing in a fixed, flawed identity, the belief that you are permanently stained, permanently broken, permanently unworthy. When identity is seen as a flowing process, a continuous becoming, there is no permanent self to be ruined. There are actions that cause harm. There are consequences that must be faced, but none of them become the final, unchangeable definition of who you are. This frees you to meet your own mistakes and imperfections with honesty instead of self-hatred, because you are not protecting an image. You are simply learning moment by moment from the ever-present feedback of reality. This radical non-clinging also transforms how you respond to external praise and blame. When praise arrives, the clinging mind wants to eagerly add it to the identity. Now I am the successful one, the wise one, the strong one. When blame arrives, the same mind wants to either defensively shield itself or collapse in debilitating shame. But when identity is not clung to praise, and blame become like passing weather patterns, temporary conditions that do not define the boundless sky itself. You still feel their effects, perhaps a momentary uplift or sting, but they no longer fundamentally decide your inherent worth. This freedom is not numbness, it is flexibility. It means you can meet life exactly as it is without needing to constantly protect or rebuild a fragile identity. This flexibility is strength because it allows you to bend without breaking, to move fluidly without losing yourself, precisely because there is no rigid self to lose in the first place. This is why in Buddhist practice, softness is power, the profound softness of meeting reality directly, openly, without desperately demanding it protect your ego or your preconceived notions of self. This understanding also dissolves the fear of being misunderstood, because when identity is no longer a performance, other people's opinions lose their suffocating grip. Their praise no longer inflates you. Their judgment no longer crushes you. You become free to be seen as you are in your raw authenticity, without editing yourself to fit an image or seeking external validation. This is not recklessness. It is honesty, the profound honesty of no longer living inside a costume, a role, a pretense. This honesty also allows for genuine growth, because when identity is rigidly clung to, growth often feels like a threat, a destabilization. The mind wants to defend what it already knows, what is familiar. But when identity is fluid, permeable growth becomes natural. Each new experience reshapes you, and instead of resisting, you openly allow the reshaping. This is what it means to be fully alive, not clinging to who you were, not demanding certainty about who you will be, but showing up as you are now in this present moment, with nothing to hide and nothing to prove. This profound showing up becomes a refuge itself, because when you no longer need life to match a preconceived story, life itself becomes enough. There is nothing to defend and nothing to chase. You are already whole, not because you are perfect, but because you stopped believing you needed to be any particular rigid version of yourself. This is the peace hidden inside non-self, not the peace of having no problems, but the peace of no longer making problems out of change. What you are is this moment's unfolding, the ceaseless flow of phenomena, not the fixed story you built to explain yourself. When you let go of the story, when the illusion of a separate, unchanging self dissolves, you discover that freedom was always here, hiding beneath the clinging mind, patiently waiting to be remembered, waiting to breathe you back into life without fear. The whispers in the wind, cultivating right speech and taming the hungry ghost. As the pioneer's day concludes and the soft, cool embrace of evening settles upon the land, the sounds of the active settlement begin to fade. The distant laughter of children, the clatter of tools being put away, the lowing of livestock, all give way to a deeper quiet. Yet even in this outward stillness, a subtle tension can arise within. It's the moment when the mind, free from the immediate demands of labor, begins its own internal dialogue, a constant stream of thoughts, judgments, and desires. Often this internal chatter is fueled by a persistent gnawing sense of lack and insidious feeling that something is missing, that more is needed for true contentment. This is the stage where we confront the powerful influence of our words, both spoken and unspoken, and where we seek to understand and tame the inner adversary known as the hungry ghost, Prita, cultivating right speech, Samavaka, as a vital tool for inner peace and collective harmony. The pioneer, having established a home and navigated the complexities of self, might now face a subtler form of hunger. Even with abundance in the larder, a sturdy shelter, and a supportive community, a nagging dissatisfaction can arise, a craving for recognition, a yearning for constant praise for their efforts, an insatiable desire to always have more, be more, or do more. This inner hunger often disguises itself as practical needs. If only I had more land, more tools, more grain, I would be truly happy. Or even as spiritual ambition, if only I meditated, more understood, more achieved enlightenment, all fear would vanish. But underneath every disguise, every seemingly logical demand, is the same insidious root, a deep-seated desperation born from profoundly forgetting one's own inherent sufficiency. Buddhism identifies this insatiable craving as the hungry ghost Preta, a being depicted with a vast empty belly but a throat too narrow to receive true nourishment, forever starving despite endless attempts to consume. This is not a mythical creature. It is a powerful metaphor for the inner state of perpetual craving and dissatisfaction that can seize hold of anyone, especially in times of loss, uncertainty, or even perceived success. When the world feels unstable, the mind instinctively panics and begins grasping for safety anywhere it can find it. This grasping feels incredibly urgent, like survival itself depends on it, but it is a cunning trick of the craving mind. This isn't a moral failing to be judged, but a deeply conditioned pattern. Lifetimes of seeking security outside ourselves, bombarded by societal messages that peace comes from acquiring more, fixing perceived wrongs, and endlessly protecting what we possess, have trained our minds to live in a perpetual state of hunger, even when in reality, nothing is truly missing. In times of actual crisis, whether personal or collective, this ancient hunger awakens louder, more insistently than ever before. The hungry ghost feeds voraciously on fear, fear of losing what you love, fear of being left out, fear of being seen as weak, the paralyzing fear that you will never, ever be enough. And once the ghost awakens, it begins to run the show, grabbing for distraction, demanding instant answers, insisting that you must solve everything immediately, or you will be swallowed by emptiness. It fuels frantic activity, gossip, blame, and a desperate need for external validation. But the hungry ghost cannot be fed with what it wants. It desires everything, and no amount of external comfort, no accumulation of external possessions, no praise, no relationship, no amount of control will ever truly satisfy it. This is because the hunger was never physical. It was never about the external object. The hunger is a profound spiritual disconnection, the painful forgetting of your own basic inherent completeness. It is the insidious belief that you are fundamentally lacking, that there is an intrinsic void within, and that something outside yourself possesses the power to fill this perceived void. This forgetting is especially easy in times of loss, because loss brutally exposes the raw vulnerability of the human condition. It is tempting to believe that if you could only replace what was lost, the security, the status, the relationship, then peace would miraculously return. But this is precisely the ghost's game. It relentlessly keeps the mind chasing one external fix after another, always promising relief just over the next horizon, and each time that relief proves fleeting, impermanent, causing the craving to grow deeper, more insistent, leading to a vicious cycle of dissatisfaction. Taming this hungry ghost does not mean crushing desire or pretending you have no needs or aspirations. It means seeing through the ghost's illusions, understanding that the hunger it feeds on is a profound misunderstanding of what you truly are. You are not lacking. You are not incomplete. Even in the depths of grief, even in the grip of fear, even in overwhelming chaos, you are already whole, complete, and sufficient. But this wholeness cannot be grasped or acquired. It can only be remembered by bravely turning directly toward the hunger itself. This turning toward is the polar opposite of what the craving mind desires. It craves escape. It craves distraction. It yearns to consume more. But Buddhist practice offers something far deeper, the profound invitation to sit right inside the hunger without frantically trying to solve it, to simply observe it without judgment. This sitting is not passive. It is a radical act of trust, the profound trust that if you meet the hungry ghost with conscious awareness, instead of desperately feeding it with more craving, something fundamental will shift. What shifts is not the outer world. It is your fundamental relationship to the hunger itself. You begin to perceive that the crushing feeling of lack is not a personal flaw, not a permanent deficiency. It is merely a passing weather pattern in the mind, an ephemeral energy. It does not define you. It does not own you. It does not need to be obeyed. When you cease desperately feeding the ghost with endless grasping, when you withhold the fuel of your attention and reaction, the ghost begins to shrink, to diminish its power. This shrinking does not happen instantly. The hungry ghost has been an integral part of your inner landscape for so long that its whispers feel like your own voice. Its demands feel like who you are. It subtly whispers that without constant wanting, without the drive to achieve, without the need for external validation, you will disappear. You will become nothing. But as you meet it with unwavering awareness, not pushing it away, but seeing it clearly, compassionately, you realize the ghost was never you. It was a deeply ingrained habit of mind, a survival strategy from long ago that no longer serves your highest good. This is where compassion enters. The hungry ghost is not evil or malicious. It is scared. It is wounded. It is the part of you that once mistakenly believed you had to perform to be loved, to achieve, to be safe, to control everything, to survive. That part of you is utterly exhausted, and what it truly needs is not more feeding, but gentle, unwavering recognition and understanding. You tell the ghost, "I see you, I understand why you're afraid, but you are no longer in charge." This inner dialogue, this compassionate witnessing, softens the ghost's relentless grip. Instead of automatically reacting to every craving as if it is an urgent, undeniable truth, you create space, the vital space to choose differently. As the craving mind relaxes, you begin to taste something the ghost in its perpetual hunger could never even imagine: contentment in the middle of imperfection. You realize you do not need to fix every single problem before you can breathe freely again. You do not need to meticulously secure every future outcome before you can feel safe again. You do not need anyone else to validate your worth before you remember your own inherent goodness and value. This contentment is not complacency or resignation. It is freedom from desperate needing. It is the kind of profound ease that arises not because life is perfect, not because all challenges have vanished, but because you have ceased demanding perfection from life and from yourself. The hungry ghost cannot comprehend this kind of ease because it is built on presence instead of possession. It comes from tasting your own completeness directly from the inside out, rather than frantically trying to collect it from external sources. Taming the hungry ghost also profoundly frees your relationships, transforming them from transactions of need into expressions of genuine connection. When you no longer treat others as mere suppliers of your missing pieces, when you stop projecting your own hunger onto them, you love them with less fear and more honesty, less demand and more acceptance. You stop desperately clinging to them as your sole sources of safety or fulfillment. You meet them exactly as they are, whole humans just like you, walking their own unique path of craving and release. This transforms love from a conditional transaction into a shared presence, a boundless giving and receiving without attachment. This clarity also transforms how you respond to collective crisis. When the hungry ghost runs unchecked within individuals and collective's fear spreads like wildfire, fueled by desperate collective needs to control the uncontrollable. But when you meet your own craving mind with unwavering awareness, you become a powerful, stabilizing presence in the community. Others instinctively sense it. They lean toward your calm, your clarity, because it reminds them of their own hidden inherent calm and sufficiency. This is why taming the hungry ghost is not just personal healing. It is a gift to the whole community. Every time you interrupt the cycle of craving and panic inside yourself, you reduce the collective weight of human desperation. Every time you meet your own hunger with kindness instead of grasping, you contribute to a world that knows desire does not have to drive every action. This is the very heart of Buddhist wealth, the profound wealth of knowing nothing is missing, of recognizing inherent abundance. It does not mean you stop working for justice or comfort or safety. It means you work without desperation from the ground of inner sufficiency instead of from a perceived lack. This fundamentally changes the quality of every action. Action rooted in craving creates more suffering, more conflict. Action rooted in contentment creates space for genuine, lasting solutions and fosters harmony. This contentment is not a gift from outside. It is a remembering, the remembering that your true nature was never broken, never incomplete. The hungry ghost forgot this, and so it ran from life to life, meal to meal, craving to craving, always reaching and never truly receiving. But you are not the ghost. You are the boundless awareness that can meet the ghost with love and set it free. This freedom is not mystical. It is available now in the simple yet profound act of pausing before you chase the next craving. In that pause resides the whole path, the chance to meet yourself, not as a starving seeker, but as a being who was always enough. In this quiet, settled space, the pioneer learns that the greatest inner enemy is not a monster to be slain, but a deeply conditioned pattern to be understood and embraced with compassion. The relentless chase of the hungry ghost is fueled by unexamined cravings and fears, which are ultimately just mental constructs. When you observe them without judgment, when you choose not to engage in their desperate dance, they begin to lose their power. This awareness, this spaciousness created by non-reactivity, allows the pioneer to stand firm in the knowledge of their own inner sufficiency, regardless of external circumstances. This is the liberation from the incessant demand for more, the recognition that peace resides not in acquisition, but in the present moment's profound completeness. The final frontier, embracing mortality and the unveiling of true refuge. As the vast open plains of the established settlement settle into the quietude of deep night, and the lamplight within the pioneer's cabin casts a warm, steady glow, a profound sense of rootedness might finally be felt. The fields once wild now yield their harvest. The structures once raw now stand as symbols of enduring effort. Yet even in this hard-won stability, a subtle truth begins to assert itself, a truth carried on the wind that whispers through the oldest trees and reflected in the infinite indifferent gaze of the distant stars. It is the understanding that everything, even the most cherished creations, even this precious life, even this very body, will one day come to an end. Most people instinctively push this truth to the back of their minds, treating it like a dark shadow to avoid rather than a wise teacher to welcome. But in Buddhist practice, avoiding this reality is seen as one of the most dangerous forms of forgetting. It leaves the heart vulnerable to shock each time life takes something away, each time change arrives, each time loss knocks on the door. This is the profound practice of Maranasati death contemplation, a tender facing of reality that liberates the heart and cultivates an unshakable trust in the impermanent flow of existence, ultimately leading to the discovery of true refuge triratana. When death remains a distant abstract concept, every hardship feels uniquely personal, as though suffering itself is some kind of cosmic mistake rather than the natural consequence of holding on to what was always destined to pass. The pioneer who has poured their life force into building and cultivating might find it unbearable to contemplate the eventual decay of their structures, the inevitable return of their fields to wilderness, or their own mortality. They might work with a frantic energy, as if by sheer will they can defy time itself, accumulating more, achieving more, as a desperate attempt to outrun the inevitable. But Maranasati is not a morbid obsession. It is a direct and tender facing of reality, a gentle acknowledgement that the mind can no longer pretend life owes it a certain number of years, or a specific type of outcome, or a future free from endings. Facing mortality is not about giving up or succumbing to despair. It is about waking up to what truly matters when every illusion of permanence is stripped away. This facing is not theoretical. It means remembering every day that the breath you are taking right now could be the last one. This body, which feels so solid, so enduring, is constantly relentlessly moving toward its final letting go. Each heartbeat is one step closer to the last. Far from being morbid, this profound remembrance actually frees the heart. It shatters procrastination, dissolves the arrogance of assuming you have infinite time to waste, and reminds you that this moment, this very instant, is immeasurably precious, precisely because it will not come again. This understanding fundamentally changes how you meet every hardship. When you truly know that life is fleeting, impermanent, you no longer treat difficulty like a personal punishment to endure. You see it for what it truly is, an integral part of the fleeting beauty of being alive. Even pain becomes a part of the precious gift when you realize that one day even pain itself will be taken from you. This does not magically make pain enjoyable, but it does make it profoundly bearable, because nothing, not even suffering, lasts forever. This is why Buddhist teachers often compare life to a delicate bubble on water, brief, shimmering, fragile, and already vanishing. This truth is not intended to scare you. It is intended to awaken the profound tenderness inside you, the part that knows every moment shared with someone you love is a temporary miracle. The part that understands even your own breath is borrowed a finite gift to be cherished and not taken for granted. This tenderness is the very birthplace of courage, the courage to live fully vibrantly while you cannot, because you expect life to stay the same, but precisely because you know it will not. This courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear shrink your life. It is about seeing fear clearly and understanding precisely where it comes from. Fear desperately clings to life because it mistakenly believes life belongs to you, that it is a permanent possession. But Maranasati dissolves this illusion. Life was never yours to keep. It's a gift on loan, a precious borrowing, and the undeniable fact that you will eventually lose it makes every moment of it shine brighter, more brilliantly, with an acute sense of its preciousness. This is why those who deeply contemplate death do not become hopeless or cynical. They become kinder, more awake, and less willing to waste even one precious hour on hatred or greed. Their priorities become clear, stripped of superficiality. This is also why death contemplation is a powerful source of forgiveness. When you truly remember that both you and everyone who has ever hurt you will eventually die, the desperate urgency to cling to blame, resentment, and grudges begins to weaken, to dissolve. You perceive that no one, no matter how powerful or seemingly influential, escapes mortality. This includes your bitterest enemies, your most cherished loved ones, and yourself. Knowing this shared destiny, what lingering grudge, what festering resentment could ever be more important than the fragile, fleeting truth of time itself? This does not mean pretending harm does not matter or excusing injustice. It means seeing that time will eventually take all of us, and understanding that holding hatred inside your own heart only wastes the brief, precious time you have left, consuming your own vitality. Maranasati is not only about your own individual death. It is about seeing that everyone is walking toward the same ending, whether they admit it or not, whether they are aware of it or not. This shared universal fate dissolves the illusion of separation, the dangerous inner enemy of isolation, because no one is spared from this ultimate truth. This contemplation also profoundly liberates you from the tyranny of perfectionism. When you truly know death is coming, when the clock of life is truly felt, you no longer postpone living life fully until you feel perfect, until you are fully healed, until you have everything figured out. You understand there is no time for such delays. Life is not patiently waiting for you to become flawless. It is happening now relentlessly, and every single breath you spend waiting for a better version of yourself is a breath lost forever, an unlived moment. This honesty also frees you from false priorities. When you realize you could die tonight, the endless frantic chase for external validation, for accumulating more for societal approval, suddenly feels ridiculously absurd. The craving for status, for applause, for the fleeting approval of people who will also eventually die, it all collapses under the crushing weight of reality. What truly matters when death is a vivid, undeniable reality is how you live today, not in some grand, heroic, or performative way, but in the small daily choices, whether you spoke kindly, whether you softened in love, whether you were fully awake and present for the life you were given. This is why many Buddhist traditions meditate in graveyards or keep skulls on the altar, not out of morbid fascination or a grim outlook, but to powerfully remember what is true. The body you decorate, protect, and praise will one day return to the earth. Knowing this is not meant to create despair. It is meant to break the trance of forgetting so that you do not spend your limited precious time chasing illusions. This remembrance also dissolves spiritual pride. No matter how wise you become, no matter how much you intellectually understand, your physical body will die just like every other body. This humbles the mind. It reminds you that spiritual practice is not a way to escape mortality. It is a way to meet mortality without fear, to face your own vanishing with the same profound tenderness and acceptance you would offer to someone you deeply love. This is why death contemplation is a practice of love, not of fear. It teaches you to love life fiercely, precisely because it is brief. It teaches you to love others fully because they are also temporary. It teaches you to love yourself without condition because there is truly no time to waste. And this love, born directly from the raw truth of impermanence, becomes the unwavering courage that carries you through every difficulty. This courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear shrink your life. When you know death is coming, you no longer wait for the perfect time to love, to forgive, to create, to speak your truth. You understand this breath is your only guarantee, and that makes you brave enough to live fully now, not because you know what comes next, but because you know this moment is already enough. This courage also transforms how you meet aging and the illness. When death is denied, aging becomes the source of terror. When death is contemplated daily, aging transforms into an invitation, a gentle reminder that every line on your face is a mark of having lived. Every ache in the body is a teacher pointing toward letting go. You stop seeing aging as failure and start seeing it as the final teaching, the teaching that nothing stays and that the beauty of life is inseparable from its fleeting nature. This understanding also softens attachment to identity. When you know death will take not only your body, but every role you ever played, every reputation you ever built, you stop clinging so tightly to who you think you are. You become freer to change, freer to release old stories, freer to meet each moment as new. This flexibility makes you profoundly resilient because when identity is not a prison, change is not a threat. Maranasati also dissolves the fear of failure. When death is real, failure loses its teeth. You understand the real failure is not losing or making mistakes. The real failure is never having shown up fully for your life. With death constantly at your side, you stop waiting for permission to live boldly. You stop holding back your love. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's idea of safety. Because what do you have to lose when everything is already passing? This freedom born from remembering death becomes the doorway to real life. Not life postponed until conditions improve, but life lived now, heart open awake, and unafraid to vanish, because you already made peace with the vanishing itself. Having confronted the ultimate impermanence of all things, the pioneer, perhaps more than ever, recognizes a profound need for refuge. This is not the refuge of escape or a place to hide from reality. In Buddhist practice, refuge triratana means a source of safety that does not depend on outer circumstances. It means something you can turn toward when life itself feels unbearable, not to numb out, but to be reminded of what does not break, even when everything else falls apart. This kind of refuge is not found in possessions, in external achievements, or even solely in personal strength. It's found in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Taking refuge in the Buddha does not mean worshiping a historical figure. It means remembering that awakening is possible even in this life, even for you. It means turning toward the example of someone who walked through confusion, loss, and fear and still found clarity and profound peace. This remembrance is not meant to inspire blind faith. It is meant to reawaken your own innate capacity to wake up, because the refuge is not only in the historical Buddha, but also in your own Buddha nature, the part of you that has always been awake even beneath all the fear, all the confusion. This internal refuge becomes essential during moments of personal collapse, because personal collapse is exactly the moment when the mind forgets what it is capable of, when grief, failure, illness, or loss tear apart your sense of identity. The small self panics. It tries to rebuild itself quickly, frantically grabbing onto any role, story, or label that feels familiar. But refuge in the Buddha invites you to pause instead of frantically rebuilding, to sit in the ruins and remember that who you are is not your fleeting story, but your boundless capacity to see clearly, to be awake, even when the story is shattered. This capacity is not a personal achievement. It is part of the inherent nature of being human. The oasis of quiet, cultivating unshakable faith and the wisdom of doubt, as the cool, profound stillness of the deepest night settles over the pioneer's world, and the rhythmic breathing of the land merges with your own, a subtle shift occurs. The external world, with its demands and distractions, fades into insignificance. The body, having released its last vestiges of tension, feels light, almost floating, and the mind, often the last frontier to surrender, finds a rare quietude, a spaciousness that was once elusive. Yet even in this deep calm, an unseen adversary can sometimes arise, a subtle whisper that challenges the very foundation of certainty and purpose and doubt. This inner foe, while unsettling, is not a sign of failure, but a profound gateway to an unshakable, authentic faith, a faith rooted not in blind belief, but in the direct experience of reality itself. This is where the wisdom of doubt truly blossoms, guiding the pioneer to an oasis of profound trust In the midst of uncertainty, the pioneer, having faced external wildernesses, built structures, understood the laws of karma, dissolved the fixed self, and even contemplated mortality, might now encounter a crisis of internal conviction. The long journey, the arduous labor, the moments of profound insight, all might be questioned by a nagging voice within. Is this path truly leading anywhere? Are these efforts truly worthwhile? Am I truly capable of finding lasting peace? This is the insidious manifestation of doubt, vicikiccha, one of the final hindrances on the spiritual path. Unlike other mental states, that cloud clarity doubt carries a unique sting because it doesn't just question a particular moment or an external event. It questions the path itself, the very foundation of one's spiritual endeavor. It whispers that practice might be pointless, that the teachings were flawed, that the teachers were mistaken, or that everything trusted might have been a monumental waste of time. This kind of doubt hurts more than ordinary confusion or fleeting frustration because it touches the core of what previously gave strength and direction. When faith falters, you are not just losing confidence in a method, you are losing the fundamental sense that your life has direction, purpose, and inherent meaning. The pioneer might look at their hard-won settlement and suddenly question if it was worth leaving the old world, if the promised land truly exists, or if their inner compass has betrayed them. Even meditation, which once felt like a comforting home, can feel hollow. Even teachings that once opened the heart can sound like empty words. This dryness, this period of profound spiritual doubt, is not a sign of failure. It is an inherent, unavoidable part of the authentic spiritual journey. It is a doorway to deeper faith, but only if one is willing to stay with it, to examine it with courage, rather than frantically running to quick superficial replacements or abandoning the path altogether. This willingness begins by understanding that genuine faith, sadha in Buddhist practice, is not blind belief in external dogmas, but a profound trust born from direct personal experience. It is not something you are told to have. It is something that organically grows each time you witness for yourself that the teachings work, even if only for a fleeting moment. The purpose of practice is never to build a perfect, unassailable faith that never doubts or falters. Instead, the purpose is to create the conditions for doubt, to reveal its own profound truth that it is not your enemy, but your sincere, aching longing for something real, something genuinely authentic. It arises not because you are weak or flawed, but precisely because you refuse to settle for shallow, superficial answers. It is the insistent, often painful voice of your own deep sincerity, demanding something more profound than borrowed belief or unexamined assumptions. This sincerity, while painful as it systematically burns away every comforting illusion and cherished pretense, forces the pioneer to ask hard, uncomfortable existential questions. Why am I truly continuing this arduous journey? What do I really trust in this vast, unpredictable landscape of life? Is there something here, a deep truth that I can genuinely lean on, even when my strength falters and everything seems to collapse? These questions are not mere distractions from practice. They are the practice itself. They serve to strip away all spiritual pretense, all layers of superficiality, and force the pioneer to meet the path in its raw, unadorned reality without any decoration or external validation. They systematically dismantle the insidious tendency to practice for mere results, to meditate for fleeting peace, or to follow teachings solely for external comfort or recognition. What is ultimately left after every superficial motive is exposed is the bare, unvarnished willingness to meet reality precisely as it is, even if reality offers no immediate tangible reward, no instant gratification, no clear answers. This is precisely where faith transforms into something far deeper than mere belief. It becomes faith in reality itself. Faith not that life will magically improve or that all problems will vanish, but that you possess the inherent capacity to meet life directly, unflinchingly, courageously, even when it hurts, even when the path feels utterly barren and empty. This profound faith is in your own innate capacity to be present, to be aware, not in specific external outcomes or predetermined results. It is the luminous knowing that awareness itself is enough, even if awareness reveals nothing but discomfort and silence. This radical shift from a conditional faith based on what happens externally to an unconditional faith in the capacity to meet what happens internally is what makes doubt profoundly transformative. It breaks the mind's desperate attachment to using spiritual practice as a mere tool to get somewhere to achieve a specific state. It ends the insidious bargaining mindset that dictates, if I meditate enough, life will feel better or I will achieve enlightenment. It replaces all of that with a simpler, more profound faith, the unshakable faith that presence itself can hold whatever arises, even deep loss, even spiritual dryness, even the most persistent doubt itself. This does not mean doubt magically disappears forever. It means you cease being afraid of doubt. You no longer need to resolve every question to find every answer before continuing your journey. You learn to walk with doubt beside you, treating it not as proof of failure or inadequacy, but as proof that you care deeply enough to question everything, to seek a truth that is genuine and unshackled. This profound shift transforms doubt into genuine curiosity, not the anxious, frantic craving for immediate answers, but the gentle, open willingness to ask without demanding instant certainty. This gentle, open-ended questioning softens the mind's panic. It creates a vast, breathable space for something quieter, more profound to emerge, the liberating understanding that faith was never about having all the answers or adhering to rigid dogmas. It was always about the courage to stay present inside the mystery, to embrace the unknown with an open heart. This kind of faith outlives every collapse, every crisis, because it no longer depends on external certainty or predictable outcomes. It is the unwavering faith that knows there is immense value in showing up and being present, even when nothing makes logical sense. This maturity also dissolves the craving for spiritual experiences. When faith is mistakenly equated with excitement, with feeling constantly inspired with peak moments of bliss or euphoria, it becomes inherently fragile. The moment those intense feelings fade, doubt rushes in to declare the path dead ineffective. But mature faith understands that real practice is not exciting most of the time. It is ordinary. It is the unwavering faithfulness of showing up for your life moment after moment, breath after breath, without needing fireworks or ecstatic visions. This kind of faith is humble. It does not need to prove anything to others. It does not need to argue with doubt or convert others to its view. It simply trusts the inherent process of being awake, even when awakening feels like confusion, even when clarity disappears for months or years. It knows that presence itself is the point, not special states, not perfect understanding, just being fully alive to this breath. This humility also meticulously protects you from spiritual pride, because spiritual pride depends fundamentally on comparing your experience to others, on believing you are somehow further along or more enlightened. It feeds off the deceptive belief that real practice always feels profound, always brings immediate benefits. But mature faith knows that the most transformative moments often feel empty, barren, challenging. It knows that doubt itself is part of the cleansing fire, burning away every layer of pretense, every egoic attachment, until only what is real, authentic, remains. This faith is a quiet, yet formidable strength, not the strength of feeling invincible, but the strength of being willing to not know. It is the strength to walk with profound uncertainty, to stay open when every part of the mind wants to close defensively, to tighten its grip. This strength does not come from outside. It arises directly from meeting doubt, without running away from seeing that doubt does not need to be solved, only understood, only witnessed with compassionate awareness. This understanding also frees you from comparing your path to others. When doubt arises, it is tempting to assume others possess something you lack: more faith, more clarity, more certainty. But real practice teaches that every sincere practitioner, without exception, encounters doubt. The only difference is whether they perceive doubt as a failure or as an integral purifying part of the journey. The ones who keep walking are not the ones who never doubted. They are the ones who learned how to doubt well. Doubting well means not hiding from difficult questions, but also not frantically demanding they be answered right away. It means keeping the heart open, expansive, even when the mind is full of uncertainty. It means continuing to practice, not because you know it will work in a predictable way, but because something deep within you remembers that presence itself is inherently valuable even when no immediate reward comes. This is why the Buddha never asked for blind belief. He asked for direct seeing for personal realization. And direct seeing requires walking through doubt with eyes wide open, not rejecting it, not dramatizing it, just meeting it as one more raw aspect of reality. This direct, courageous meeting is what makes faith resilient, authentic, and truly unshakable, because it is no longer a fragile belief dependent on external validation. It becomes a profound trust born from seeing that even doubt itself can be held with compassion, awareness, and profound acceptance. When faith falters, what remains is the simple yet powerful choice to stay present anyway. That choice is faith. Not faith in predetermined answers, not faith in guaranteed outcomes, but faith in the boundless power of awareness itself, even when awareness meets nothing but silence. The legacy of letting go, the path of true refuge and collective awakening. As the deepest hours of the night gently embrace the pioneer's world, and the rhythmic breathing of the settled land merges with your own, a profound sense of integration settles. The wilderness, once a source of external and internal adversaries, has become a teacher. The structures built, the inner landscapes, explored the transformations undergone, all led to a final, profound realization. True refuge is not found in external constructs, but in the unwavering ground of being itself. This is the culmination of the journey where the self-imposed battles cease, and the deepest security is discovered in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This final stage of the path is about recognizing the inherent interconnectedness of all beings and the collective nature of liberation, understanding that the greatest enemy was indeed oneself, but the greatest ally is also within and shared. Having confronted the ultimate impermanence of all things through Maranasati and navigated the treacherous waters of doubt, the pioneer, perhaps more than ever, recognizes a profound need for refuge. This is not the refuge of escape or a place to hide from reality's challenges. In Buddhist practice, refuge triratana means a source of safety that does not depend on shifting outer circumstances, on fleeting possessions, or on external validations. It means something you can turn toward when life itself feels utterly unbearable, not to numb out the pain, but to be reminded of what does not break, what remains whole, even when everything else appears to fall apart. This kind of refuge is not found in material wealth, in accumulated achievements, or even solely in personal strength, for these are all subject to change and loss. It's found in the timeless principles embodied by the three jewels. Taking refuge in the Buddha does not mean worshiping a historical figure, nor does it imply a blind dogmatic adherence to a personality. Instead, it means remembering that awakening is possible even in this very life, even for you right here, right now, amidst all your imperfections and struggles. It means turning toward the living example of someone who walked through confusion, immense loss, debilitating fear, and profound suffering, and yet found ultimate clarity, unshakable peace, and boundless compassion. This remembrance of the historical Buddha as a fully awakened human being is not meant to inspire blind faith. It is meant to powerfully reawaken your own innate capacity to wake up. It is a profound mirror showing you what is possible for human potential, because the ultimate refuge is not only in the historical Buddha, but also in your own inherent Buddha nature. The luminous, pure potential for awakening that has always been present within you, even beneath all the layers of fear, confusion, and mistaken identity. This internal refuge becomes absolutely essential during moments of personal collapse. For personal collapse is precisely the moment when the mind forgets what it is truly capable of. When grief, failure, illness, or profound loss tear apart your constructed sense of identity, the small self instinctively panics. It frantically tries to rebuild itself, quickly, desperately grabbing onto any familiar role story or label that offers a fleeting sense of security. But refuge in the Buddha invites you to pause instead of frantically rebuilding, to courageously sit in the ruins of your old constructs, and remember that who you truly are is not your fleeting story, not your temporary roles, but your boundless inherent capacity to see clearly, to be awake, even when the story is shattered and the world seems to have crumbled. This capacity is not a personal achievement earned through struggle. It is part of the inherent, universal nature of being human, a birthright available even if you have forgotten it for decades, even if you have never tasted it directly before. Refuge in the Buddha is the profound faith in that possibility, the unwavering trust that no matter how far you have fallen, no matter how lost you feel, there is still a way to meet life with clarity, with compassion, and with an open heart. This trust is not blind optimism. It is the lived memory passed down through generations of those who also fell, who also doubted, who also despaired, and who through diligent practice also stood up again finding their own inherent awakening. Taking refuge in the Dharma is turning toward the teachings, not as abstract philosophy-dreary doctrines or rigid dogmas, but as practical direct guidance for this exact moment you are experiencing. The Dharma does not offer magical solutions or external fixes. It offers a precise map for navigating the complex terrain of collapse, for standing steadily in the face of uncertainty without losing your mind to despair or getting entangled in self-created suffering. When the ground falls out from under you, the Dharma does not promise to rebuild it immediately. Instead, it teaches you how to stand gracefully in midair, how to meet groundlessness itself with curiosity, with presence instead of recoiling in fear. This teaching begins with the profound understanding that collapse, change, and impermanence are not proof that you failed or that something is inherently wrong with you. On the contrary, it is proof that reality is working exactly as it always has. Everything that arises must fall. Every identity, every role, every sense of self you build will eventually dissolve. Not because life is cruel or capricious, but because impermanence is the inherent nature of all conditioned things. This is not punishment. It is the fundamental truth the Dharma has always pointed toward, the liberating truth that nothing stable or permanent can be found in anything that can be lost. This truth is not meant to make you numb or indifferent. It is meant to powerfully wake you up to the boundless freedom hidden inside collapse. It is the profound freedom to finally see that your peace and happiness do not depend on frantically rebuilding the old life or clinging to past constructs, because your peace was never in the outer form. It was always in the clarity of awareness that can meet each moment directly, unflinchingly, without clinging to what came before. The Dharma is the luminous map back to this radical clarity. It does not erase pain, for pain is an inherent part of the human experience, but it shows you how to suffer wisely, how to suffer in a way that leads to profound understanding, compassion, and ultimate liberation, instead of bitterness, resentment, or despair. The Dharma also meticulously protects you from the mind's cunning tricks during moments of collapse. In times of crisis, the mind often creates endless distorted stories of blame, of shame, of hopelessness, of victimhood. The Dharma interrupts these self-defeating narratives with direct, unwavering reminders that suffering is not personal in isolation, that craving for control fuels suffering, that presence dissolves fear, and that every moment is a fresh opportunity to choose a different response. These reminders are not empty slogans. They are lifelines, practical ways to anchor yourself firmly in reality when the mind tries to drown itself in self-created fiction. Taking refuge in the Sangha means turning toward the community, not as a mere social club for comfort or a group of like-minded individuals, but as a vibrant circle of shared courage, collective wisdom, and unwavering support. In moments of personal collapse, isolation is profoundly dangerous. The mind left to its own devices readily believes its suffering is unique, its failures unforgivable, its fears unspeakable, and its brokenness irreparable. But when you sit in the authentic presence of others who also know suffering, who also know fear, who also have faced the shattering of identity, isolation cracks open. You remember that collapse is not exile. It is a doorway into the shared human condition, a universal experience that connects us all. This is why the Sangha is a jewel. It is a refuge in shared humanity, a sacred space where you no longer have to pretend to be fine or put on a brave face because everyone understands the raw, vulnerable truth you are carrying. In this space of authentic vulnerability and shared understanding, the burden of suffering lightens not because others magically fix your pain, but because being seen, heard, and held in your rawness dissolves the pervasive illusion that you were ever truly alone. The Sangha also keeps you profoundly honest. When collapse tempts you to numb out, to turn away from practice, to disappear into old self-defeating habits, the unwavering presence of others who are still walking the path, still showing up, reminds you that you do not have to vanish. Their steadfastness becomes your mirror, your reminder that even now, even in the depths of your struggle, there is still a path beneath your feet, even if you cannot see it clearly yet. This is why refuge in the Sangha is a form of protection, not from pain itself, but from the mind's insidious tendency to isolate itself in pain, to wallow in self-pity, or to succumb to hopelessness. When you are surrounded by others who also sit with grief, who also bow to impermanence, who also diligently return to the Dharma when life falls apart, your own strength is remembered through theirs. Your own resolve is rekindled. This is not dependency. It is the profound strength of being part of something larger than your isolated self, a living stream of shared wisdom and resilience. Taken together, the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, become a complete and all-encompassing safety net, a profound source of unwavering refuge. It is not a net that prevents you from ever falling or experiencing hardship. Rather, it is a net that lovingly catches you when you do fall, ensuring that your descent leads to growth and awakening instead of despair. The Buddha reminds you that awakening is possible even now, even in your current state of being. The Dharma reminds you that there is a wise, compassionate way to meet suffering even now, a clear path through the wilderness of the mind. And the Sangha reminds you that you do not have to meet this alone. You are part of a shared human journey supported by kindred hearts. This is why taking refuge is not a mere ceremonial moment, a one-time declaration. It is a daily living act, a conscious choice in every moment. Every time you remember the Buddha's boundless courage, every time you return to the profound insights of the teachings Dharma, every time you lean into the authentic presence of others on the path Sangha, you are taking refuge again. And each time you take refuge, you remember that no matter how deep the collapse, no matter how intense the inner battle, the boundless ground of awakening is still always beneath your feet. This is the secret strength of Buddhist practice. It does not promise you will never break, but it promises that even when you break, you can fall into refuge instead of falling into despair. The refuge was always there, waiting patiently beneath every illusion of control, beneath every belief that you had to do this alone. To take refuge is to finally allow yourself to be held by the very path that countless beings have walked before you, beings who also lost everything, who also doubted, who also despaired, and who also found that awakening can rise even from ruins. This is why refuge is called a jewel, not because it sparkles with material value, but because it is precious beyond measure, the ultimate treasure that cannot be taken by time, by loss, or even by death. The refuge is already here. You only have to remember where to look and to open your heart to its embrace. The unveiling, trusting awareness, beyond the veil of doubt and the final embrace. As the deepest hours of the night gently embrace the pioneer's world, and the rhythmic breathing of the settled land merges with your own, a profound stillness settles within you. It is the quiet of complete surrender, where thought itself feels like a distant echo, and the body has released its last vestiges of tension. You are not chasing sleep. You are becoming it, merging with the boundless peace that has waited patiently all along. In this profound quiet, the final veil is lifted, revealing that even the most formidable inner adversary, doubt, is but a temporary construct, and that ultimate refuge lies not in external certainty, but in the luminous, unbroken awareness that is your true nature. Having confronted the ultimate impermanence of all things through Maranasati and navigated the treacherous waters of doubt, the pioneer, perhaps more than ever, recognizes a profound need for refuge. This is not the refuge of escape or a place to hide from reality's challenges. In Buddhist practice, refuge triratana means a source of safety that does not depend on shifting outer circumstances, on fleeting possessions, or on external validations. It means something you can turn toward when life itself feels utterly unbearable, not to numb out the pain, but to be reminded of what does not break, what remains whole, even when everything else appears to fall apart. This kind of refuge is not found in material wealth, in accumulated achievements, or even solely in personal strength, for these are all subject to change and loss. It's found in the timeless principles embodied by the three jewels. Taking refuge in the Buddha does not mean worshiping a historical figure, nor does it imply a blind dogmatic adherence to a personality. Instead, it means remembering that awakening is possible even in this very life, even for you right here, right now, amidst all your imperfections and struggles. It means turning toward the living example of someone who walked through confusion, immense loss, debilitating fear, and profound suffering, and yet found ultimate clarity, unshakable peace, and boundless compassion. This remembrance of the historical Buddha as a fully awakened human being is not meant to inspire blind faith. It is meant to powerfully reawaken your own innate capacity to wake up. It is a profound mirror showing you what is possible for human potential, because the ultimate refuge is not only in the historical Buddha, but also in your own inherent Buddha nature. The luminous, pure potential for awakening that has always been present within you, even beneath all the layers of fear, confusion, and mistaken identity. This internal refuge becomes absolutely essential during moments of personal collapse, for personal collapse is precisely the moment when the mind forgets what it is truly capable of. When grief, failure, illness, or profound loss tear apart your constructed sense of identity, the small self instinctively panics. It frantically tries to rebuild itself, quickly, desperately, grabbing onto any familiar role story or label that offers a fleeting sense of security. But refuge in the Buddha invites you to pause instead of frantically rebuilding, to courageously sit in the ruins of your old constructs, and remember that who you truly are is not your fleeting story, not your temporary roles, but your boundless inherent capacity to see clearly, to be awake, even when the story is shattered and the world seems to have crumbled. This capacity is not a personal achievement earned through struggle. It is part of the inherent universal nature of being human, a birthright available, even if you have forgotten it for decades, even if you have never tasted it directly before. Refuge in the Buddha is the profound faith in that possibility, the unwavering trust that no matter how far you have fallen, no matter how lost you feel, there is still a way to meet life with clarity, with compassion, and with an open heart. This trust is not blind optimism. It is the lived memory passed down through generations of those who also fell, who also doubted, who also despaired, and who through diligent practice also stood up again, finding their own inherent awakening. Taking refuge in the Dharma is turning toward the teachings, not as abstract philosophy-dry doctrines or rigid dogmas, but as practical direct guidance for this exact moment you are experiencing. The Dharma does not offer magical solutions or external fixes. It offers a precise map for navigating the complex terrain of collapse, for standing steadily in the face of uncertainty without losing your mind to despair or getting entangled in self-created suffering. When the ground falls out from under you, the Dharma does not promise to rebuild it immediately. Instead, it teaches you how to stand gracefully in midair, how to meet groundlessness itself with curiosity, with presence instead of recoiling in fear. This teaching begins with the profound understanding that collapse, change, and impermanence are not proof that you failed or that something is inherently wrong with you. On the contrary, it is proof that reality is working exactly as it always has. Everything that arises must fall, every identity, every role, every sense of self you build will eventually dissolve. Not because life is cruel or capricious, but because impermanence is the inherent nature of all conditioned things. This is not punishment. It is the fundamental truth the Dharma has always pointed toward, the liberating truth that nothing stable or permanent can be found in anything that can be lost. This truth is not meant to make you numb or indifferent. It is meant to powerfully wake you up to the boundless freedom hidden inside collapse. It is the profound freedom to finally see that your peace and happiness do not depend on frantically rebuilding the old life or clinging to past constructs because your peace was never in the outer form. It was always in the clarity of awareness that can meet each moment directly, unflinchingly, without clinging to what came before. The Dharma is the luminous map back to this radical clarity. It does not erase pain, for pain is an inherent part of the human experience, but it shows you how to suffer wisely, how to suffer in a way that leads to profound understanding, compassion, and ultimate liberation, instead of bitterness, resentment, or despair. The Dharma also meticulously protects you from the mind's cunning tricks during moments of collapse. In times of crisis, the mind often creates endless distorted stories of blame, of shame, of hopelessness, of victimhood. The Dharma interrupts these self-defeating narratives with direct, unwavering reminders that suffering is not personal in isolation, that craving for control fuels suffering, that presence dissolves fear, and that every moment is a fresh opportunity to choose a different response. These reminders are not empty slogans. They are lifelines, practical ways to anchor yourself firmly in reality when the mind tries to drown itself in self-created fiction. Taking refuge in the Sangha means turning toward the community, not as a mere social club for comfort or a group of like-minded individuals, but as a vibrant circle of shared courage, collective wisdom, and unwavering support. In moments of personal collapse, isolation is profoundly dangerous. The mind left to its own devices readily believes its suffering is unique, its failures unforgivable, its fears unspeakable, and its brokenness irreparable. But when you sit in the authentic presence of others who also know suffering, who also know fear, who also have faced the shattering of identity, isolation cracks open. You remember that collapse is not exile. It is a doorway into the shared human condition, a universal experience that connects us all. This is why the Sangha is a jewel. It is a refuge in shared humanity, a sacred space where you no longer have to pretend to be fine or put on a brave face because everyone understands the raw, vulnerable truth you are carrying. In this space of authentic vulnerability and shared understanding, the burden of suffering lightens not because others magically fix your pain, but because being seen, heard, and held in your rawness dissolves the pervasive illusion that you were ever truly alone. The Sangha also keeps you profoundly honest. When collapse tempts you to numb out, to turn away from practice, to disappear into old self-defeating habits, the unwavering presence of others who are still walking the path, still showing up, reminds you that you do not have to vanish. Their steadfastness becomes your mirror, your reminder that even now, even in the depths of your struggle, there is still a path beneath your feet, even if you cannot see it clearly yet. This is why refuge in the Sangha is a form of protection, not from pain itself, but from the mind's insidious tendency to isolate itself in pain, to wallow in self-pity, or to succumb to hopelessness. When you are surrounded by others who also sit with grief, who also bow to impermanence, who also diligently return to the Dharma when life falls apart, your own strength is remembered through theirs. Your own resolve is rekindled. This is not dependency. It is the profound strength of being part of something larger than your isolated self, a living stream of shared wisdom and resilience. Taken together, the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, become a complete and all-encompassing safety net, a profound source of unwavering refuge. It is not a net that prevents you from ever falling or experiencing hardship. Rather, it is a net that lovingly catches you when you do fall, ensuring that your descent leads to growth and awakening instead of despair. The Buddha reminds you that awakening is possible even now, even in your current state of being. The Dharma reminds you that there is a wise, compassionate way to meet suffering even now, a clear path through the wilderness of the mind. And the Sangha reminds you that you do not have to meet this alone. You are part of a shared human journey supported by kindred hearts. This is why taking refuge is not a mere ceremonial moment, a one-time declaration. It is a daily living act, a conscious choice in every moment. Every time you remember the Buddha's boundless courage, every time you return to the profound insights of the teachings Dharma, every time you lean into the authentic presence of others on the path Sangha, you are taking refuge again. And each time you take refuge, you remember that no matter how deep the collapse, no matter how intense the inner battle, the boundless ground of awakening is still always beneath your feet. This is the secret strength of Buddhist practice. It does not promise you will never break, but it promises that even when you break, you can fall into refuge instead of falling into despair. The refuge was always there, waiting patiently beneath every illusion of control, beneath every belief that you had to do this alone. To take refuge is to finally allow yourself to be held by the very path that countless beings have walked before you, beings who also lost everything, who also doubted, who also despaired, and who also found that awakening can rise even from ruins. This is why refuge is called a jewel, not because it sparkles with material value, but because it is precious beyond measure, the ultimate treasure that cannot be taken by time, by loss, or even by death. The refuge is already here. You only have to remember where to look and to open your heart to its embrace. The luminous unveiling the end of becoming and the ever-present peace. As the deepest hours of the night gently embrace the world and the rhythmic breathing of the settled land merges with your own, a profound stillness settles within you. It is the quiet of complete surrender, where thought itself feels like a distant echo and the body has released its last vestiges of tension. You are not chasing sleep. You are becoming it, merging with the boundless peace that has waited patiently all along. In this profound quiet, the final veil is lifted, revealing that even the most formidable inner adversary, doubt, is but a temporary construct, and that ultimate refuge lies not in external certainty, but in the luminous, unbroken awareness that is your true nature. This is the culmination of the journey where the self-imposed battles cease, and the deepest security is discovered in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This final stage of the path is about recognizing the inherent interconnectedness of all beings and the collective nature of liberation, understanding that the greatest enemy was indeed oneself, but the greatest ally is also within and shared. Having confronted the ultimate impermanence of all things through Maranasati and navigated the treacherous waters of doubt, the pioneer, perhaps more than ever, recognizes a profound need for refuge. This is not the refuge of escape or a place to hide from reality's challenges. In Buddhist practice, refuge triratana means a source of safety that does not depend on shifting outer circumstances, on fleeting possessions, or on external validations. It means something you can turn toward when life itself feels utterly unbearable, not to numb out the pain, but to be reminded of what does not break, what remains whole, even when everything else appears to fall apart. This kind of refuge is not found in material wealth, in accumulated achievements, or even solely in personal strength, for these are all subject to change and loss. It's found in the timeless principles embodied by the three jewels. Taking refuge in the Buddha does not mean worshiping a historical figure, nor does it imply a blind dogmatic adherence to a personality. Instead, it means remembering that awakening is possible even in this very life, even for you right here, right now, amidst all your imperfections and struggles. It means turning toward the living example of someone who walked through confusion, immense loss, debilitating fear, and profound suffering, and yet found ultimate clarity, unshakable peace, and boundless compassion. This remembrance of the historical Buddha as a fully awakened human being is not meant to inspire blind faith. It is meant to powerfully reawaken your own innate capacity to wake up. It is a profound mirror showing you what is possible for human potential, because the ultimate refuge is not only in the historical Buddha, but also in your own inherent Buddha nature. The luminous, pure potential for awakening that has always been present within you, even beneath all the layers of fear, confusion, and mistaken identity. This internal refuge becomes absolutely essential during moments of personal collapse. For personal collapse is precisely the moment when the mind forgets what it is truly capable of. When grief, failure, illness, or profound loss tear apart your constructed sense of identity, the small self instinctively panics. It frantically tries to rebuild itself quickly, desperately grabbing onto any familiar role story or label that offers a fleeting sense of security. But refuge in the Buddha invites you to pause instead of frantically rebuilding, to courageously sit in the ruins of your old constructs and remember that who you truly are is not your fleeting story, not your temporary roles, but your boundless inherent capacity to see clearly, to be awake, even when the story is shattered and the world seems to have crumbled. This capacity is not a personal achievement earned through struggle. It is part of the inherent, universal nature of being human, a birthright available even if you have forgotten it for decades, even if you have never tasted it directly before. Refuge in the Buddha is the profound faith in that possibility, the unwavering trust that no matter how far you have fallen, no matter how lost you feel, there is still a way to meet life with clarity, with compassion, and with an open heart. This trust is not blind optimism. It is the lived memory passed down through generations of those who also fell, who also doubted, who also despaired, and who through diligent practice also stood up again, finding their own inherent awakening. Taking refuge in the Dharma is turning toward the teachings, not as abstract philosophy-dreary doctrines or rigid dogmas, but as practical direct guidance for this exact moment you are experiencing. The Dharma does not offer magical solutions or external fixes. It offers a precise map for navigating the complex terrain of collapse, for standing steadily in the face of uncertainty without losing your mind to despair or getting entangled in self-created suffering. When the ground falls out from under you, the Dharma does not promise to rebuild it immediately. Instead, it teaches you how to stand gracefully in midair, how to meet groundlessness itself with curiosity, with presence instead of recoiling in fear. This teaching begins with the profound understanding that collapse, change, and impermanence are not proof that you failed or that something is inherently wrong with you. On the contrary, it is proof that reality is working exactly as it always has. Everything that arises must fall. Every identity, every role, every sense of self you build will eventually dissolve. Not because life is cruel or capricious, but because impermanence is the inherent nature of all conditioned things. This is not punishment. It is the fundamental truth the Dharma has always pointed toward, the liberating truth that nothing stable or permanent can be found in anything that can be lost. This truth is not meant to make you numb or indifferent. It is meant to powerfully wake you up to the boundless freedom hidden inside collapse. It is the profound freedom to finally see that your peace and happiness do not depend on frantically rebuilding the old life or clinging to past constructs, because your peace was never in the outer form. It was always in the clarity of awareness that can meet each moment directly, unflinchingly, without clinging to what came before. The Dharma is the luminous map back to this radical clarity. It does not erase pain, for pain is an inherent part of the human experience, but it shows you how to suffer wisely, how to suffer in a way that leads to profound understanding, compassion, and ultimate liberation, instead of bitterness, resentment, or despair. The Dharma also meticulously protects you from the mind's cunning tricks during moments of collapse. In times of crisis, the mind often creates endless distorted stories, stories of blame, of shame, of hopelessness, of victimhood. The Dharma interrupts these self-defeating narratives with direct, unwavering reminders that suffering is not personal in isolation, that craving for control fuels suffering, that presence dissolves fear, and that every moment is a fresh opportunity to choose a different response. These reminders are not empty slogans. They are lifelines, practical ways to anchor yourself firmly in reality when the mind tries to drown itself in self-created fiction. Taking refuge in the Sangha means turning toward the community, not as a mere social club for comfort or a group of like-minded individuals, but as a vibrant circle of shared courage, collective wisdom, and unwavering support. In moments of personal collapse, isolation is profoundly dangerous. The mind left to its own devices readily believes its suffering is unique, its failures unforgivable, its fears unspeakable, and its brokenness irreparable. But when you sit in the authentic presence of others who also know suffering, who also know fear, who also have faced the shattering of identity, isolation cracks open. You remember that collapse is not exile. It is a doorway into the shared human condition, a universal experience that connects us all. This is why the Sangha is a jewel. It is a refuge in shared humanity, a sacred space where you no longer have to pretend to be fine or put on a brave face because everyone understands the raw, vulnerable truth you are carrying. In this space of authentic vulnerability and shared understanding, the burden of suffering lightens not because others magically fix your pain, but because being seen, heard, and held in your rawness dissolves the pervasive illusion that you were ever truly alone. The Sangha also keeps you profoundly honest. When collapse tempts you to numb out, to turn away from practice, to disappear into old self-defeating habits, the unwavering presence of others who are still walking the path, still showing up, reminds you that you do not have to vanish. Their steadfastness becomes your mirror, your reminder that even now, even in the depths of your struggle, there is still a path beneath your feet, even if you cannot see it clearly yet. This is why refuge in the Sangha is a form of protection, not from pain itself, but from the mind's insidious tendency to isolate itself in pain, to wallow in self-pity, or to succumb to hopelessness. When you are surrounded by others who also sit with grief, who also bow to impermanence, who also diligently return to the Dharma when life falls apart, so your own strength is remembered through theirs, your own resolve is rekindled. This is not dependency. It is the profound strength of being part of something larger than your isolated self, a living stream of shared wisdom and resilience. Taken together, the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, become a complete and all-encompassing safety net, a profound source of unwavering refuge. It is not a net that prevents you from ever falling or experiencing hardship. Rather, it is a net that lovingly catches you when you do fall, ensuring that your descent leads to growth and awakening instead of despair. The Buddha reminds you that awakening is possible even now, even in your current state of being. The Dharma reminds you that there is a wise, compassionate way to meet suffering, even now a clear path through the wilderness of the mind. And the Sangha reminds you that you do not have to meet this alone. You are part of a shared human journey supported by kindred hearts. This is why taking refuge is not a mere ceremonial moment, a one-time declaration. It is a daily living act, a conscious choice in every moment. Every time you remember the Buddha's boundless courage, every time you return to the profound insights of the teachings Dharma, every time you lean into the authentic presence of others on the path Sangha, you are taking refuge again. And each time you take refuge, you remember that no matter how deep the collapse, no matter how intense the inner battle, the boundless ground of awakening is still always beneath your feet. This is the secret strength of Buddhist practice. It does not promise you will never break, but it promises that even when you break, you can fall into refuge instead of falling into despair. The refuge was always there, waiting patiently beneath every illusion of control, beneath every belief that you had to do this alone. To take refuge is to finally allow yourself to be held by the very path that countless beings have walked before you. Beings who also lost everything, who also doubted, who also despaired, and who also found that awakening can rise, even from ruins. This is why refuge is called a jewel, not because it sparkles with material value, but because it is precious beyond measure, the ultimate treasure that cannot be taken by time, by loss, or even by death. The refuge is already here. You only have to remember where to look and to open your heart to its embrace.